Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup episode. I am covering a case today that you have really hammered me for. It's the case of Gary Heidnik, Cleveland kidnapper, Ariel Castro, Jennifer Daugherty. Gary Michael Heidnik, he was born on November the 22nd of 1943, and he was born in Eastlake of Ohio, which is like a suburb in Cleveland. Now, he was one of two children to Michael and Ellen Heidnik, and he had a younger brother by the name of Terry. Now, Gary Heidnik, he had a very rough childhood, and honestly, I think some people would maybe even say that it was like a really brutal childhood. So the children, they were raised by their mother for around 4 years, and then they were placed into the care of their father and his new wife, which must be difficult for any child, especially when you're young and like your parents split up and it's, you know, a new woman on the scene who you think might be trying to replace your mum. Now, Heidnik did claim that his father would both emotionally and physically abuse him, and this abuse would ultimately lead to a lifelong problem for Heidnik of bedwetting, which, as we know, is so common to see in children who have suffered, you know, physical or sexual abuse. Now, according to Gary Heidnik, he said that his father would constantly belittle him and mock him and humiliate him for his bedwetting, which, let's bear in mind, is most likely caused by his abusive father in the first place. Heidnik said that his father, Michael, would force him to hang his urine-stained bed sheets out his window, which was like facing the entire neighbourhood, to humiliate him further. All I can say with this is if I was a neighbour in that street, I would not be mocking or laughing at that child. I would be wondering what kind of parent in their right mind who loves their child would do something so nasty to humiliate them in the first place. I would be concerned for the child. Now, just to be absolutely and completely fair, once Heidnik was later arrested, his dad would absolutely deny every single claim of abuse that Heidnik put against him. I don't know. I don't know what happened. Like, obviously an abuser is going to deny abuse, but then obviously serial killers, they like to have a reason and an excuse for what they do. So it's hard to know. Was he abused? Was he not? I don't know. Now, unfortunately for Heidnik, school would be no better. We say this all the time. I think I said it in my last episode. Children are mean. They're cruel. Not all of them, but a lot of them can be. Now, school was tough on Heidnik because he was a very socially withdrawn person. He found it really hard to interact with other children, and to be quite honest, he didn't want to. He didn't really care to interact with them. He wouldn't even make eye contact. In fact, he refused to make eye contact with his peers. And honestly, like, as much as Gary did not care about speaking to people at his school, if they spoke to him, he was just downright rude and nasty. Like, one day there was a new girl in his class at school, and she basically asks him, you know, did you do the homework that we got assigned? Gary looks shocked. He's almost thinking like, why is this person speaking to me? And he turns around to the girl and says,
"You are not worthy enough to speak to me."
Kicks off, flips his lid, like, insane. Honestly, like, people like that just irritate me so much. And not even just these kind of cases with these serial killers. Like, there's people like that in real life who just think they are holier than thou, and it's like, who died and made you king? Now, some other bullying that Gary would experience would be due to the shape of his head. Apparently he had a bit of a funny shaped head, and, you know, people picked up on that basically right away. Now, him and his brother Terry, they would say that this happened to Gary's head, like he got all misshapen and bent out of shape when he fell out of a tree when he was a little boy, and it left his head with like this permanent indent to it, which, you know, again, kids at school, they notice these things. Now, despite his social struggles within school, Gary was very academically gifted. He had an IQ of 148, which, you know, pretty impressive. Now, his father, he would encourage him to enroll in Staunton Military Academy, which was in Staunton, Virginia. Gary, he would enroll here. He thrived here for a bit, and he remained there for around 2 years before he decided to drop out, very shortly before his graduation. So Gary went on to spend a very brief period of time in another school before he completely dropped out at the age of 17, and this is when he decided to join the US Army. So Heidnik, he would serve in the army for around 13-ish months, and his drill sergeant would grade him as excellent. But despite being graded as excellent and sort of thriving in that environment, whenever he would apply for specialist positions like a military officer, he would always be rejected. Now, Heidnik, he would be sent to San Antonio, Texas, where he would be trained as a medic, and he did do well in the training. However, he wouldn't really remain there for very long. It wasn't really, for him. So he would wind up transferred to the 46th Army Surgical Hospital in Landstuhl, West Germany. And within just weeks of being in Germany, he would earn his GED. Now, unfortunately, things would really start to take a turn for the worse for Gary Heidnik when he started suffering from really severe headaches, dizziness, nausea. He was also having blurred vision, and then he was diagnosed with gastroenteritis. Doctors, they noted that Gary Heidnik, he displayed some symptoms of mental illness, so they did give him a prescription for trifluoperazine. Now, Gary, he would later be transferred to a medical hospital in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and whilst he was here, the doctors did diagnose him with schizoid personality disorder. And because of this diagnosis, he would be honourably discharged from the services. Now, schizoid personality disorder is a personality disorder, and it's sort of characterised by a lack of interest in social relationships, being really sheltered, keeping to yourself, not wanting to interact with anyone else. You can be secretive, display emotional coldness and detachment alongside apathy. Now, sometimes with people who suffer from schizoid personality disorder, they can live in their own sort of internal fantasy world. So after being discharged, he did become a licensed nurse and enrolled at the University of Pennsylvania. However, he would drop out of the university after just 1 semester. And at this point, he was working at the Veterans Administration Hospital, but he wound up being fired because apparently he was so bloody rude to all the patients. And also, never really helped that he had very poor attendance, but I think the rudeness was the nail in the coffin for him. Now, from August of 1962, right up until Gary Heidnik was arrested, he was in and out of psychiatric hospitals constantly. He really, really struggled with his mental health, and it is said that he tried to commit suicide at least 13 times. What's really devastating is this seems to be something that ran within their family. His mother had previously been diagnosed with bone cancer, and she did commit suicide. She took her own life via an overdose. Now, not only his mother, but his brother Terry, he would also be in and out of psychiatric hospitals. Now, it's definitely worth mentioning that all of Gary Heidnik's life, he had a desire to control everything and everyone around him. So as he gets older, he starts to think, how can I control people now? What can I do to get full control over someone? And then he's thinking, I'm going to start a cult. Yeah, it's one of those. And he also starts to think, what's the best way to accrue members of a cult? I know, I'll do it through the church. Why do they always leave the church alone? Step away from the church. So in October of 1971, Gary Heidnik, he incorporated a church by the name of the United Church of the Ministers of God. This would start off with 5 followers and a $1,500 investment. However, this would rapidly grow, and I mean rapidly. And he was able to raise $500,000 for his cult. Now, I didn't dive too deep into the cult because it's not really the main focus of the story, which is surprising. I might touch on it here and there, but there's not a whole lot that we need to know. So at this point, Gary Heidnik, who has never had an interest in any social relationships, suddenly he's thinking, do you know what life is missing? a wife. Right, he decides he wants a wife. So Heidnik, he used a matrimonial service to meet his wife, Betty Disto. Now, she would come over from the Philippines in 1985, and they would be married in Maryland the following month. Now, unfortunately, Gary Heidnik's relationship and marriage with Betty would not last very long. It deteriorated very, very quickly, especially because Betty walked in one day and she found Gary in bed with not one woman, not two women, 3 women. He was having a foursome. Like, honestly, who has the time or stamina for that? But that's what she found. She stayed with him for a bit, but things would only get worse from here. Gary would force Betty to watch as he had intercourse with other women. And what's even more horrific and just downright disturbing is the fact that he would repeatedly rape and beat his own wife, Betty. Now, luckily for Betty, she was able to get the help and support from the Filipino community within Philadelphia, and they helped her escape Gary Heidnik. She left him around 1986. Like I said, like, that marriage deteriorated very, very quick. They were married like a year, if that. Now, he would be charged with spousal rape, but Betty would go on to give birth to a son by the name of Jesse John Disto. Now, as we probably know, Gary Heidnik, he's not a one-woman kind of guy, okay? He wants his finger in all the pies, which is a really bad way of putting it. Oops. But he would also go on to have another child with a woman by the name of Gail Linco, and they would call this child Gary Jr. How cute. No, really. Now, their child, Gary Jr., he would be placed in foster care very shortly after birth, which in this situation is probably the best thing and the safest thing for him. Now, Gail Linco, she had also made people aware of Gary Heidnik's sexual deviancy, and she even told people that he would lock her up for his own sexual thrill. Like, he would lock her away to a point where, like, she couldn't get out by herself. She would have to wait on Gary getting her out. But this was all for a big sexual thrill. And at this point, I really think that Heidnik is trying to start his own football team because he has another child with another woman by the name of Anjanette Davidson. I will apologise, in all sources that I read, it all refers to Anjanette in a certain way, and I'm not sure if it's like the correct way of saying it. But Anjanette, she was illiterate and she also suffered from mental disability, which I'm not, if that's not the correct term, please correct me in the comments and I'll pin your comments because I don't want to offend anyone at all. But that's just what was said on the sources that I found. Now, due to Anjanette's circumstances and also the circumstances of Gary Heidnik, you know, the nasty evil person that he is, their daughter Maxine would be placed in foster care right away, which again, I can only assume in this situation with somebody like Gary Heidnik as your father, it's probably the best thing for you. Now, what is so sickening is that Gary Heidnik, he would be arrested for raping Anjanette's sister. Now, Anjanette's sister Alberta, she was actually living in an institution for those who are mentally disabled, and this was in Penn Township. Now, this happened because one day Gary Heidnik, he had signed Alberta out for like day release from her institution. And I should mention that this all takes place in 1978, but he took her back to his home and then locked her in his basement. Now, once she had been found and returned back to the hospital after an examination, they very quickly realised that Alberta had not only been raped, but also sodomised, and she had also contracted gonorrhea. Now, Heidnik would be arrested and charged and convicted with rape, kidnapping, unlawful restraint, false imprisonment, involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, and interfering with the custody of a committed person. Now, Heidnik, he would spend 3 years of his incarceration inside a mental institution before being released in 1983. So I don't know, I think the sentence lasted a whole 5 years, which for what he did is absolutely not, that's a slap on the wrist. 5 years for everything that he done to Alberta, everything that he's done to his ex-partners, his ex-wife, and that is all he gets? Are you kidding me? And then on November the 25th of 1986, Gary Heidnik, he would capture his first victim, and this would be 25-year-old Josefina Rivera. I do apologise, I'm not sure if you would say it like Josefina, but it is spelled Josefina, but I think I'm wrong, as usual. Now, we will get into this in a bit, but people actually say that Josefina, she started off as a victim of Gary's. Absolutely. But others seem to speculate that over time, she would turn into an accomplice. But I will get into that and how it all comes about, but I really want to know what you guys think, and I'll also give my opinion at the end. Now, Josefina, she was a sex worker, and Gary had lured her back to his home under the pretense that if she performed sexual acts on him, that he would pay her well. So Josefina, of course, she goes back with Gary to his home and performs her services, and once she's done performing these services, she is putting on her clothes when Heidnik comes right up behind her and begins to strangle her. Now, what is absolutely terrifying in this moment is Josefina truly believed that she was going to die, and she almost had like a near-death experience where she said that her whole life just flashed before her eyes, and it was almost like a film projector flipping through certain things that were going on in her life at that moment. She is terrified, she is scared for her life, and when she was able to, she started screaming and crying for help. Now, because she's screaming and crying for help, Heidnik, he comes up and he starts to beat her with a stick and basically says to her, "I will stop beating you when you stop screaming." And very quickly, Josefina realised that the best thing she can do in this situation is comply with this man's demands, because when she stopped screaming, he stopped hurting her. Now, Gary, he threw Josefina into a pit, he boarded it up and sealed it, and the only sort of light source that Josefina would have would be through the cracks in the wood of the covering that was sealing her into the pit. Also, FYI, I checked the pronunciation, it's telling me that it's Josefina, so I'm going to go with Josefina, and if it's Josefina, shoot me. Now, the only time that Josefina would be let out of this pit was when Gary Heidnik wanted to abuse, torture, or rape her. In the space of just 3 months, Gary Heidnik would abduct another 5 women. Now, all of his victims that he would abduct were black young women, and his lawyer had later stated that Heidnik had told him that he wanted to enslave young black girls to have a baby with every single one of them in order to create the perfect race. Now, it's said that Josefina, she sort of started off by trying to pretend that she was on Gary Heidnik's side. She would do anything she could to please him, she would obey his rules, comply with his demands, everything that you can think of. But then Stockholm Syndrome started to take over, and she did start to care about this man. Now, I do have a quote from Josefina which I want to read out because I feel like it's helpful for her part in this case. So Josefina stated, "Any time that you are cut off from the world outside, whoever's holding you captive, you are going to grow to like him regardless, because he is your only contact to things that are outside. He is your only source of survival." I don't know how people are going to feel about that, because a lot of people do feel as though Josefina was an accomplice in this situation as it goes on. Other people believe she genuinely had succumbed to Stockholm Syndrome, which of course does not excuse her part that she plays in some of this, but at the same time, this is a woman who was doing everything she could to survive. So once Heidnik was comfortable and he believed that Josefina was on his side, he would sort of use her against the other women, and he decided to make her boss of all the other women who was held under his captivity. And he even admitted to Josefina that he wanted to pit all of the women against each other. Now, for example of the kind of treatment Josefina got compared to the other females, if she was obeying his orders, complying with his demands, he would bring her like hot chocolate and hot dogs. He would even let her sleep outside of the hole. However, if she disobeyed his demands, then she would face severe consequences, and she would also lose all of her privileges. And I honestly think that immediately this pits the women against each other, because the other women are going to look at Josefina and be like, what's so special about her? Why is she getting all the special treatment? What's she doing? Like, she must be on his side. It gets their minds going and thinking the absolute worst. Now, if any woman in that pit disobeyed Heidnik, they would be in grave danger. Not just getting, facing consequences, having severe punishment, they would be in grave danger. Now, when they disobeyed him, he would put them on punishment. They would be starved, they would be beaten repeatedly, they would be tortured. It was just the most horrific and heinous thing that you could do to a human being. Sometimes he would wrap duct tape around their mouths, and then he would slowly insert a screwdriver into their ears just so he could watch them writhe and squirm in sheer pain and terror. And on it, like, I could not imagine going through something like that, like a screwdriver in the ear. That can kill you. That's what I'm saying. This is grave danger. These women could die. And what is just so horrific as well in this case is for Josefina to keep her privileges and not face his consequences, she had to partake in the torturing of these other women. Josefina, she had to fill the pit with water, and then she would attach a stripped electrical cord to the other women's chains and watch as they got electrocuted. The electrocution and the pain that they were facing became too much for one of the victims, Deborah Dudley, who would actually die from the electrocution. Once Heidnik had examined Deborah's body and concluded that she was absolutely dead, he coldly turned to the woman and said, "Yeah, she's dead. Now I can go back to having a quiet basement." Are you kidding me? How can you be such a monster and do this to these women and then just not care at all? Like, there is no human empathy in this man. Now, devastatingly, Deborah Dudley's death and murder was not the only one to occur in this basement. There's another woman that we're going to talk about by the name of Sandra Lindsay. Sandra Lindsay, she was a mentally disabled woman, and Gary Heidnik had lured in Sandra shortly after the kidnapping of Josefina. I'm not completely sure if this has anything to do with it, but Heidnik would say that due to Sandra's mental disability, she was unable to endure the torture and abuse for as long as the other women, and so he would punish her for not being able to endure the abuse the same. Because of her inability to endure torture and pain in the same way that the other women could, she would be put on punishment. Gary Heidnik, he would starve her for days on end, and then one time when he went to give Sandra food after starving her for a couple of days, she didn't move. So he released the chains that Sandra was in, and her body just collapsed to the ground. Once Sandra was lying there lifeless on the floor, it took the other women a moment to realise that their now friend was dead. She had been murdered. And as soon as they realised this, they all began to scream and cry, and Gary Heidnik said that he would only allow a moment for them to grieve before then snapping at them and telling them, "Now cut your BS or you will die next." Sandra Lindsay's body would be dragged up the stairs by Heidnik and took into the kitchen, where he would proceed to dismember her. He cooked her ribs in the oven and he boiled her head on the stove, and the stench that was coming from her dead body was so bad that the neighbours even called the police on him. Now the police, they come to the house and he has an excuse. He basically says that he had fallen asleep and that he's burnt his roast dinner, and that's what that smell was. And the police are like, "Alright, okay, like, your roast smells like dead flesh, but okay, like, sure, we'll be off." Heidnik, he would put Sandra Lindsay's legs and her arms into the freezer, and then her other remains he would grind up, mix in with dog food, and force the other women to eat her. And you know what is just so evil? I mean, obviously this man is completely evil. There is no if, buts or maybes about it. But he didn't even hide the fact that these women were eating their friend, because he knew that they had no choice but to eat her or they would die. A few days prior to Sandra Lindsay's murder, 3 of the women had been put on punishment. And the reason for this is because he allowed the women to watch TV, and one of the women had, kind of like jokingly to the other women in the group, they had said that they were so hungry that the dog food in the TV ad looked delicious. They wished that they could eat the dog food in the TV ad because they were so hungry and so starved by this man. This completely angered Heidnik, and he thought to himself, if you want to eat dog food, I will buy you dog food. And then it just so happens that once Sandra Lindsay had passed away, he thought it was a good idea to grind up her remains, I can't even believe I'm saying this, her remains, mix it with the dog food and serve it to the woman. This whole event and ordeal of these women having to eat one of their friends would haunt them for the rest of their lives. But ultimately, this was survival. This is what they had to do to survive and to beat starvation. And one of the women had even later said, if it wasn't for me eating her or eating dog food, I wouldn't be here today. As I said, there is some very, very mixed opinions regarding Josefina Rivera, regarding whether she was an accomplice or whether she was a victim suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. But regardless, she would ultimately be the person to save all of these women. So towards the end of these women's captivity, Heidnik was allowing Josefina to go out into the outside world. Now, he was basically using her as bait to lure in more victims. She would approach these women and try to lure them home. All the while, Heidnik is right by her side. Like, Josefina could not breathe without him knowing. Now, on March 24th of 1987, Josefina had helped Heidnik lure a 7th victim to his home. Now, because she had done such a good job in luring this poor, innocent woman to his home, she made a request to Heidnik. She asked if he would let her go for just a few minutes. She will come right back, but if he could let her go and visit some family members. Shockingly, Heidnik agreed to this. So he drove her to a gas station and he told her, I will wait here for you getting back and you better come back. Now, Josefina, of course, agrees and says she'll meet him back at the gas station, and ultimately she starts to walk away. She's walking very casually, and then as soon as she is out the sight of Heidnik, she runs to the nearest telephone that she can get and she calls the police. So officers, they respond to her call, they find Josefina, and immediately they notice the chafing on her legs from where the chains have been. After seeing this and after speaking to her, they pull up at the gas station and Heidnik is arrested. Now, there was a supposed accomplice of Heidnik's by the name of Cyril Brown, and he would be arrested, but then later he would be released on $50,000 bail. I could not find much out about him, but he did say that he witnessed Lindsay's death and also the dismemberment of her body. I could not find much on him. If you know more or you know a source that could tell me more, then please let me know, because what do you mean there's an accomplice? But he was basically let go on the $50,000 bail because he had agreed that he would testify against Heidnik at the trial. Then once Heidnik had been arrested, the police would raid his house of horrors. After 4 months of imprisonment, torture, abuse and rape, the women who survived were finally free. Now, I will say the surviving victims were absolutely furious with Josefina Rivera. They believed that she should have been charged as an accomplice because of the torture that she had put them through. And I can totally see from those women's point of view, like when Josefina's been down there, she's been treated differently. She's received almost preferential treatment, which is horrible to say because I know Josefina still had a horrific time. But those women have witnessed her torture them, and I can only imagine how conflicted they must feel with their feelings toward her. Despite the women wanting her to be charged as an accomplice, Josefina was recognised as a victim. Shortly after his arrest, Heidnik, he would attempt to hang himself in his jail cell, and thankfully this was unsuccessful. Now listen, I am not trying to make any jokes regarding this case because it is heinous in the highest degree of that word. It is disgusting, evil, horrific. he is a monster, but he said something a bit funny. So, Heidnik, he tried to claim to the police that the woman in the pit in his basement, they were already there when he moved into the house. The imprisoned woman came with the house. Like, for sale, home, with washing machine, oven, and a basement full of imprisoned women. Does he think we're all stupid? No home comes with imprisoned women. Now, despite his very best efforts to get let off with an insanity plea, Gary Heidnik would be convicted on July the 1st of 1988. Now, he does have quite a few charges against him, so I'm just going to read them out just so I get them all correct. So he was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 6 counts of kidnapping, 5 counts of rape, 4 counts of aggravated sexual assault, and 2 counts of involuntary deviant sexual intercourse. Now, thankfully, this monster would be sentenced to death. He would attempt suicide again in January of 1989, but yet again, this was unsuccessful. The guards were really watching him. They were like, nah, you don't get to call your time. We will call your time. What I found to be quite crazy, in 1997, Maxine, his daughter, and also his ex-wife Betty Disto, they would request a stay of execution. They said that he was not competent to face execution. And I cannot believe that after everything that he put Betty through, she would try and get his execution stayed. I mean, again, is it like Stockholm Syndrome? I just don't understand. But luckily, the final ruling would come in on 3rd of July 1999, and he was going to be sentenced to death. There was no stay of execution happening here. Gary Heidnik's final meal was 2 slices of cheese pizza and a black coffee. He was then executed by lethal injection on July the 6th, 1999. So that is it for this case, but I do just want to know what you think regarding Josefina Rivera. I mean, this was a woman who was fighting for her life, who was in survival mode and was suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, and in the end, she did get the woman help. She did save the woman. But the reason that the woman found it really hard to forgive her and class her as a victim was because of the murder of Deborah Dudley, which, her murder was caused by the electrocution, and the person who set up the electrocution was Josefina, of course, at the demand of Heidnik, but the woman just couldn't see by that. Josefina suffered. We need to remember that she was raped, she was tortured, she was abused. She just so happened to find a way to make her time, I was going to say less horrific, but in no way would it be less horrific, but she found a way that she wouldn't have to face the same grade of torture. I'm conflicted because she is a victim, and I don't believe she would have committed these actions in her normal life had she not have been the victim of Gary Heidnik. And I just hope and pray that every single one of these women that survived this horrific ordeal have got the help, the support, the love from their family, from their friends to make it through this, because how they lasted 4 months, I will never know. Guys, I just need to show you my other big beautiful boy, Barry. He's not very well today. Barry does not like to be picked up much, but also today he's been sick because he's not feeling well. Baby. Just now I will pop all of the photos I can find of the victims on the screen so we know exactly who it is that we are sending love and prayers to after this horrific ordeal that they face, and I hope and pray that the women who sadly lost their lives to this evil monster have been able to find peace. It's so important that when we cover these cases, we always end by doing a whole 360 and bringing it right back to the important people and the people who matter, and that is the victims. Please remember them, remember their names and your faces, and keep them in your heart, because these women deserve to be remembered. So that is it for another true crime and makeup video. I really hope you found this one interesting. I know it was a tough case to listen to, and I'm quite surprised I was able to hold it together, because I really thought I was gonna burst into tears when I told this case, but somehow I kept it together. If you do enjoy my videos, please make sure you like, comment and subscribe. Put the notification bell on so you don't miss when I upload. It's so important that you engage with the video in some way, so a like, comment, share would honestly mean the world to me. It just lets YouTube know you enjoy my content and that other people might enjoy it as well, and helps push the videos out. I'm really struggling just now in YouTube, like my views are coming down and my watch time's coming down, and it's kind of freaking me out a wee bit because, you know, I want to be positive, but when you see the numbers come down a bit, it's a bit scary. So any help that you can provide would mean the world to me. In the description below, you will find my email address that you can send your case suggestions to, or you can leave them in the comments below. Either way, they all get compiled onto the huge list that I've got. I do try and get back to all of my emails, but a lot of them go into spam and junk and stuff like that. So if you've sent it and I've not replied, if you can maybe resend it or leave it in the comments if it's easier, that would be amazing, just so I can make sure I'm getting back to everyone. Down below you will also find my TikTok and Instagram handles if you want to give me a follow over there. You will also find links to all of the products that I've used on my face today in case there is anything at all that you would like to pick up or have a look at. But before you go, make sure the notification bell is hit so you don't miss when I upload every Wednesday, Sunday at 7:30 British Standard Time. And we are going to do a few surprise videos along the way. Don't know when they'll be, just whenever I can get the spare time to film and edit them and upload them, but I will be doing surprise videos for you guys because I want to give you as much content as I possibly can to show my appreciation for all your love and support. But that is it for today. Be a good person, do not be a bad person, stay safe, look after each other, and until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye! So Ariel Castro, he was born on July the 10th of 1960, and he was born in Yauco, Puerto Rico. Did I say that right or did I say that wrong? So let's be honest, anything outside of Scotland I'm the worst at pronouncing. But he was born to his father Pedro Castro and also his mother Lillian Rodriguez. He had nine siblings. Big old family. 9 siblings. To be honest, Lillian and Pedro's relationship was very, very rocky, very turbulent. There was a lot of trauma, we could say. And because of the rockiness of their relationship, when Castro was just a child, his parents did end up divorcing, with his mother then taking him and his siblings to the United States. So they first lived in Exton of Pennsylvania, and then they moved on to Cleveland, Ohio, which funnily enough was where his father had moved to, as well as his father's family. So they did have relatives around, but obviously it's going to be really strange moving from Puerto Rico over to the United States. So Ariel Castro, he did claim that he had a very traumatic childhood. He said that he was abused physically, sexually, verbally. He claimed that his first sort of spout of sexual abuse occurred when he was just 5 years old, and he was molested by a neighbour when he was still living in Puerto Rico. And then he also claimed that he was raped by his own uncle in his adolescence. And of course, no child should ever go through that. I mean, no adult should ever go through that. Not excusing his behaviour later on, but we can absolutely sympathise with him as a child if he went through this. Now, Castro had claimed that his mother, Lillian, apparently she was extremely abusive to him, verbally, physically. She would hit him with objects like belts and sticks. She would slap him with like just her open hand, and he did say that life was really difficult for him. Guys, have I had that bit of makeup on my face the whole time? So yeah, Castro, he had said that his childhood was just really difficult, his adolescence, when he was living with his mum. Now, I couldn't find out if she was abusive to his siblings. You know, sometimes when there's no backup from the siblings, it can be difficult to believe, but as we know, abusive parents, sometimes they only target one child who they deem to be weaker or more deserving of the abuse, so can't really state for sure what happened. Now, I will say there's not a whole lot known about Castro's time at school. We do know that he attended Lincoln West High School in Ohio, Cleveland. We don't really know too much about how well he did in school, but I was able to see that he was deemed to be quite smart. but smart in a very manipulative way. Like, he knew how to manipulate his way out of a situation or into a situation. He was always kind of playing mind games with people, which we will absolutely see as this case goes on. So in the 1980s, the Castro family, they winded up moving in across the street from a young girl by the name of Grimilda Figueroa. Now, immediately when Castro sees Grimilda, it is like hearts in his eyes. He's like the mask when his eyes pop out and his tongue rolls out when he sees like an attractive woman. So immediately he's like, wow, I need to get me some of that. Now, lucky for little Ariel Castro, but it would turn out that, you know, Grimilda had also noticed him noticing her, and she liked what she seen as well. So the pair, they begin dating, and for quite a period of time they are living between each other's parents' houses. So they're living together, but you know, they're going from Castro's house to Grimilda's house, back to Castro's house. And then these pair of lovebirds, they were able to get themselves their own little house on 2207 Seymour Avenue. And this was still in Cleveland, and they got this around 1992. Listen, I have to be honest, right? We all know I like to be harsh about these serial killers, murderers, kidnappers, whoever they are. I like to be harsh about them because, well, I hate them and they're evil, so it seems fair. But I just cannot believe that men like this, men like Ariel Castro, which you've seen the photos, right? Hardly a ticket. How do they get women? Now, do they have that like charm that, you know, apparently like Ted Bundy had, where he was able to attract women despite looking facially like an absolute rat? I don't know. Or were they just wearing really good aftershave? I'm not sure. But how these people get women in the first place is completely beyond me. So Grimilda and Castro, because they were living under the same roof together for quite a long period of time, they were considered like legally married under the Ohio common law. This is basically a union where couples would be considered legally married if they were living together and also presenting themselves as a married couple to family and friends. Now, with this, they wouldn't need to have like a formal ceremony or a marriage license. They would automatically be considered a married couple. Now, these couples, if they wanted to divorce, they would have to get a legal divorce. The Ohio common law, this was recognised until 1991. So like, if you had commitment issues and you were just like testing the waters, living with your partner for maybe like a year or two, sorry to tell you, you're married. Let's talk real estate. Let's talk 2207 Seymour Avenue. What did it have to offer? So the house was 2-storey, it was 1400 square foot, it had 4 bedrooms. Like, did they have money? Because that's quite impressive, 4 bedrooms. Now, it had 4 bedrooms, but it did only have 1 bathroom, but like, that's okay if it's just going to be 2 of you. But they would go on to have children, so like tight squeeze in the morning if you need to pee before you head to work. Now, this house also had a 760 square foot unfinished basement. We know where this is going, right? And also, I know I'm giving you like all the specs of the property, but I promise I'm not trying to sell you it in any way, just trying to give you like a general lay of the land. I'm not a real estate agent. Now, it probably comes as no shock to you to learn that this fairy tale romance did not last very long. So Figueroa's sister, Elida Carabello, she had actually said that as soon as this couple moved into 2207, all hell started breaking loose. Elida had stated that Castro used to beat Grimilda within an inch of her life. Like, one time he broke her nose, he dislocated her shoulder twice, he broke her ribs and broke her arms. One time he bet her so badly that she wound up with a blood clot on her brain, which resulted in an inoperable tumour. Then on another occasion, Castro had thrown Grimilda down like a set of stairs, like quite a big flight, and she ended up cracking her skull open. He abused her profusely. Then in 1993, Ariel Castro, he would be arrested for domestic violence, but he wouldn't be indicted by a grand jury. Weird. Don't understand why, right? But in 1996, Grimilda, she decides that she has to get out of this relationship for good. So she leaves the family home with her 4 children and the police, they assist her out of the home. As soon as she had left, she secured full custody of all 4 of the children, and Ariel Castro, he was detained, but no charges were pressed. How? This woman literally has an inoperable tumour on her brain, and that's not enough for you to press charges? Now, despite leaving the home and moving away and getting custody of the 4 children, Grimalda would still very much be in Castro's firing line. He was not giving up without a fight, and he was stalking Grimalda. He was harassing her, threatening her life, attacking her like out of nowhere, just jumping out and brutally beating her. And on several occasions, he even abducted their daughters. Then in 2005, Grimalda, she would file charges against Castro for the several injuries that she had obtained from him after their separation, and also for the abduction of their daughters. Now, the court, they granted her a temporary restraining order, and this restraining order would be dismissed just a couple of months later. So like, what was the point in the first place? Because you're going to let her fend for herself just a couple of months later anyway and try and protect her children while she's at it. Make it make sense. Now, remember how I was saying that Castro had bet Grimalda so badly at one point that she wound up with this inoperable tumour? In 2012, she would actually pass away from complications of this inoperable tumour. So he did kill her, and I'm sorry, but at that point, should he not have been convicted with murder? I'd say so. That's it. Cuff him, fry him. Now, Castro, he had worked as a bus driver for the Cleveland Met School District, and he would eventually be fired in 2012 for a lot of bad judgment. Bad judgment, right? This is how they worded it, and I think it goes further than bad judgment, but we'll get into it. Now, I'll be honest, when I heard this whole being fired for bad judgment, I was like, well, like, what kind of bad judgment can you have when you're a bus driver? Like, was it running a red light? Was it pulling out too late? That's what she said. Or was it driving too fast? Like, I had all these questions and no enough answers, so I really delved into his bad judgment, and I was shook. So Castro, he had been making illegal U-turns whilst he had toddlers and infants on board. At one point, he left a child on the bus alone so he could go have lunch at a Wendy's. Yeah. And then, this one, he left a child alone on the bus. He then went home, took a nap, and then came back. The child was locked on the bus by themselves. This man has the absolute audacity to leave a child on a bus to go for lunch at a Wendy's and not even bring them back a snack. I have to say though, the one that did make me laugh out all of this like bad judgment was he actually used to use the bus to go grocery shopping. Could you imagine like this guy just pulling up in a bus to do his big shop? Alright. Like his boss would literally be like, you know, Castro, why didn't you meet your schedule again today? And Castro's like, well, it's Thursday, it's big shop day, I had to go to Tesco. Now, people who knew Castro, or if you asked someone what they had heard about Ariel Castro, they did not have a good thing to say about this man. Like, this man was just known for being a complete asswipe. People who knew him said that he was incredibly narcissistic. Like, everything was about him. He felt like he was the most important person in the room at all times. He had like this god complex where he just thought he was incredible. And I'm sorry, but with that frazzled hair, absolutely not. You look like you've been electrocuted. Now, another thing that came up a lot when people were asked about Ariel Castro is he was a man who lacked empathy. He had no empathy, he didn't have any remorse, he never regretted how he treated his wife or his children. And of course, as we will see, this lack of empathy, lack of remorse, narcissistic tendencies is something that would continue throughout the duration of his life. He also lacked responsibility, like he would never allow himself to be held accountable for the crappy things that he did. Anytime he did something wrong, it was always someone else's fault. He's like, no, I'm sorry, that was Patricia. And as you can tell throughout Castro's whole life, right, maybe take out his childhood and adolescence, although we don't know for sure, I would go as far to say was probably like this back then. He was just a horrific, abusive man. Point blank, period, right? He was awful. And this is something that just escalated through every year of his life. He just got worse and worse and worse. His crimes just escalated over time. I mean, he was responsible for his first wife's death. Tells me everything that I need to know. With these escalations, this would bring us to the abductions of 3 young women. Now, I just want to confirm these 3 women, they were abducted on separate years, like separate dates, etc. But I am going to go through their abductions first of all, and then we can come back to their treatment whilst they were in his captivity. So first of all, we're going to talk about Michelle Knight. So Michelle Knight, she was born on April the 23rd of 1981. Now, it is detailed that Michelle had quite a rough childhood. Actually, a really, really rough childhood. It wasn't the best start in life for her. Michelle was severely bullied throughout the entirety of her time in school, particularly in high school, and she wound up dropping out and then falling pregnant with her son Joey, and she would eventually give birth to Joey when she was 18 years old. Now, devastatingly, Michelle would lose custody of her son Joey, and this just took an awful toll on her, of course it would, and she vowed that she would get her son back into her custody no matter what it took. Now, as if going through all of this wasn't bad enough, Michelle also experienced homelessness. She was sexually abused by a male relative. Now, I have to say that Michelle, she went through all of these horrible, difficult times, but she always exhibited strength and resilience. And when she was abducted by Ariel Castro, this would be no different. This woman has strength beyond belief. So on August the 23rd of 2002, Michelle, she was on her way to a custody hearing for her son. She was hoping with this hearing that she would be able to get her son back in her custody. Now, the building that this custody hearing / appointment was in, Michelle was having a lot of trouble finding it, and of course she doesn't want to be late to something that's so important. Michelle, she is asking people on the street if they could, point her in the right direction, if they could show her where she's meant to be going, but ultimately no one was really being that helpful. And that is when she would see Ariel Castro. So Michelle, she approaches Castro, she explains where it is that she's trying to go and if he could, give her directions to the building. So Castro explains to her where this building is, and then he's like, oh, do you know what though? Like, it is quite a bit away, so if you walk, you might actually be late, which of course is stressing Michelle out because this is like the most important day of her life, to be honest. She's hoping to get her son back in her custody. So Castro can see that Michelle's freaking out, and this is where he knows he can take advantage of her. So Castro says to Michelle, you know what, I don't want you being late. This is obviously really important to you, so why don't I give you a lift to the building, make sure you make it on time. Now Michelle at this point, she's completely desperate, like she wants to be there on time, she wants to make a good impression to the court. And not only this, but Michelle recognised Castro as the father of someone that she knew. So how dangerous could this somewhat kind of stranger be? As it turns out, very. So once Michelle gets in the car, she gets a seatbelt and stuff on, and she's just waiting for Castro to drive her to this building. Michelle notices right away that Castro does not seem to be going in the right direction of the way that he told her the building was. So she picks him up in this right away. She's like, where are you going? Like, you said I'm going to be late, so can we please just get to the building? Now Castro tells her because they're driving, like that's bought her some time. So he says that he's heading back to his house because he has a puppy that she could give to her son once she regains custody and be mother of the year. So Michelle's kind of thinking like, I'm not that bothered about getting this new puppy, I just want to get my son, but I suppose you're doing me a favour, so okay, yeah, that's fine. Go back to yours, get this puppy, and then, get me to the building. As Michelle's on her way back to Castro's house, she notices that her passenger side door doesn't have a door handle. Why could this be? alarm bells are going off. But ultimately Michelle is thinking, like, I know who this guy is. He's not going to do anything bad. Like, just stay calm. It could just be a coincidence that his door handle is missing. So Castro and Michelle, they arrive at Castro's house, and Castro sort of like points her in the direction of where these puppies are. So Michelle, she heads to the room on the second floor, and once she enters this room, bang, the door slams behind her. Michelle, she was then tied up by her hands and feet. She was hoisted up onto this beam thing to restrain her, and she would be left in that room for 3 days all by herself without any food or any water. But this, for Michelle, would only be the beginning of over a decade in captivity. Now, what's really devastating about Michelle's case is the fact that no one really seemed to care that she was missing, apart from her family, and in particular her mother, Barbara Knight. Police, they play their usual card. They're like, oh, well, you know, Michelle, she's probably just ran away. Michelle had a very important appointment that day. She had made it clear to her family and her friends how important this appointment was. Her mother and family knew she had not ran away, and Barbara told the police that she believed that Michelle had been abducted, but they would not listen to her. And police, they basically concluded to themselves that Michelle had ran away in a huff because she was unable to regain custody of her son Joey, despite never attending the hearing. Now, because of this, Michelle, she received little to no media coverage. The news about her disappearance was not widespread because she's a runaway. Now, police decided, because they had reached the conclusion that Michelle was in fact a runaway, they decided not to enter her into the missing persons database. So no one was even actively looking for Michelle, apart from her family who was desperate to find her. The police were absolutely useless. And as I've stated before, Castro did take 3 women, and Michelle was not his last victim. Castro's next victim was Amanda Berry. Now, Amanda Berry, she was born on January the 17th of 1986 in Cleveland, Ohio. Amanda was incredibly smart. She was bright, she was funny, she was just loved and adored by anyone who met her, and she had really big dreams of becoming a singer. And Amanda, she was a really hard worker, and she really showed that she had what it took to really fight for her dreams. She even had herself a job at the age of 16 years old. So Amanda Berry, she was extremely close with her family, and especially her mother, Luana Miller, which is a bit like Michelle Knight. Michelle Knight was really close with her mother as well. Amanda's mother truly believed that Amanda could do anything she wanted to, and she fully supported her dreams of becoming a singer. Now, it was on April the 21st of 2003, just one day before her 17th birthday, that Amanda would disappear. Now, Amanda's big sister, she was the last person to hear from Amanda. So Amanda had called her big sister that very day and said that she was getting a lift home from someone that she knew from her job at Burger King, so she should be home quicker than normal. Now, devastatingly, Amanda, she never confirmed who it was that was giving her a lift, just that it was someone that she knew. And it's so horrible to think that her family are expecting her home quicker, but she wasn't coming home. And if you haven't already put the jigsaw pieces together, the person giving her a lift was of course none other than Ariel Castro. Now, Amanda recognised Ariel Castro as being the father of one of her friends. So Amanda, because she knew him, she immediately trusted him and was more than happy to accept the lift, because this is a father of her friend. Now, Castro, of course, he would take Amanda back to his house on Seymour Avenue, and Amanda was not allowed to leave. And do you know what the police did? And the FBI? They immediately marked her as a runaway. Of course they did. Of course. This was despite the pleas from her family, her friends, everyone who knew her. They believed that Amanda had in fact been abducted. And thank God, the FBI, they were proved wrong the very next week when Amanda's mother got a phone call from Amanda's cell phone, and the person on this phone call said to Luana Miller, "I have Amanda. She's fine. She will be home in a couple of days." And it took this phone call for the FBI to be like, maybe she's missing. And what is just so horrible as well is this phone call gave Amanda's family hope that whoever had her, maybe they would let her go in a couple of days, when in fact this was a big fat lie, because Amanda, she would be held in captivity for a decade. Now, Castro's third victim was Georgina Lynn de Jesus. Now, Georgina, she was born on February the 13th of 1990. Now, I will say she's better known as Gina. She goes by Gina, so we are going to call her Gina. She was incredibly bright, bubbly. She showed a ton of promise for her future. Like, she was going to go on and do big things. Her family and friends just knew it. Even her teachers knew this. Like, she had big aspirations, and everyone in her life believed that she could do anything that she put her mind to. Now, it would be on April the 2nd of 2004 when Gina would be abducted. So Gina was last seen at a payphone around 3 p.m. She was on her way home from middle school that day, and that evening she was supposed to be spending the night at a friend's. Now, this friend was Ariel Castro, daughter of Ariel Castro. So Arlene and Gina, they phone Grimilda and they ask if Gina can stay the night at Arlene's house. Now, Grimilda, she's not really feeling up to having an extra child in the house. So she tells Arlene and Gina, like, not this time, but, you know, next time, yep, she can stay, but just not tonight. So the girls, of course, they start walking their separate ways, Gina going to her home and Arlene going to hers. So Gina's on her way home, and that's when she bumps into Ariel Castro. Now, Ariel tells Gina that he needs help finding Arlene, which is really strange to Gina at this point, because she's like, I've just been with Arlene. Like, why are you trying to find her? Like, she's on her way home. But ultimately, this is her friend. She wants to make sure she's okay. So she agrees with Ariel that she will help him look for Arlene. So Gina, she would accompany Ariel Castro back to his house. And once she entered that home, the front door would close behind her. And this is truly where the pain and horror would begin. Gina, she was only 14 years old when she was abducted and subjected to the kind of things that she would be. Now, despite being brought into the house and into the rooms at separate times, the early days of captivity was more or less the same for all of the girls, and no one could have prepared them for the torture and the pain that they would have to endure. So at first, the girls would be held in the basement where they would be restrained and chained up. Now, they were restrained so heavily that they could barely move, like they could barely adjust their position. Ariel, he would starve them for days at a time. They had to go to the toilet in a plastic bucket that was rarely ever emptied. Now, what we need to remember here is Grimilda has the children. The children live with Grimilda. Castro is in this house all by himself. He's still at 2207 Seymour Avenue. And he's thinking to himself, you know, this is a 4-bedroom house and I'm only using one of the bedrooms. I could bring these girls upstairs and lock them in a bedroom each. And that's what he decides to do. So Castro, he tells the girls that he's going to bring them upstairs and they're going to be imprisoned upstairs. They all get a separate room each and they're chained up to the wall. Now, their rooms were completely dark. The basement was also completely dark. The door would always be locked to their rooms, and the only sort of source of seeing out of this room that they had was the small hole in the door that he would use to pass food through. And let me just tell you, this food came very few and far between. They were given one meal a day, if that, if they were lucky. So on top of receiving one meal a day, if they're lucky, the women, they were also only allowed to shower twice a week, but it would be very rare that they would actually get to shower twice a week, let alone once a week. Now, each woman, they were subjected to the exact same torture and abuse. Physical and sexual abuse. Ariel Castro, he would come and go from each of their rooms as much as he pleased. And when he would go into these rooms, he would beat and rape these women so severely. And I realise I'm saying women, but let's be real here. 2 of these are very, very young girls, minors. Now, on top of these rapes and beatings these young women were having to endure, Ariel Castro, he would also play mind games with them. He would almost tease freedom to them. Sometimes he would leave their room door unlocked, leave them unchained, and he would just disappear out of the room, giving these girls a false sense of hope that they might be able to escape. And when they would try to escape, Ariel Castro was right outside the door. He would do this to the women just so he could beat and rape them some more. He wanted these young women to know that no matter what, he was in control and only he could decide if they were ever going to get free. And he was adamant that they wouldn't. And not only this, but Castro, he would also threaten the women and tell them that he was going to kill them in their sleep and that they had to sleep with one eye open. This would result in these young women not sleeping for days on end because they were terrified that he was going to come into their room at night and murder them in their sleep. Again, it's these mind games that he was playing, like he was such a sadist. He got off on watching them in emotional and physical pain. And you know what? All of this is absolutely evil and disgusting, but do you know what I found really sad? Is the girls, they were not allowed to acknowledge their birthdays at all. If they spoke about their birthdays, they would be beaten up. Instead, Castro made them commemorate their abduction day. Every year that came around, they had to commemorate their abduction day like it was some kind of celebration. He wanted them to celebrate the day that he took away their freedom. He is just an evil POS monster, asswipe, idiot. Like, I can't even. He is the worst of the worst. Now, in 2004, Amanda Berry, she would actually be featured on a segment of Fox's America's Most Wanted, and this segment, it winded up linking her to Gina DeJesus, who, as we know, had went missing that very year. Now, devastatingly, Michelle Knight, she would not even be mentioned in this segment, because of course the police believe that she's just a runaway. Why not? And I'm sure you guys already realise this, but I just want to keep reiterating, at no point did Michelle Knight's family give up hope that she was out there somewhere, but no matter what they said to the police, no matter what kind of evidence they tried to present to them, the police and the FBI, they just wouldn't listen to them. And it must have been devastating for them to see the segment on Gina and Amanda, and for Michelle not to be included when they knew that she had been abducted. They know their daughter and they know that she would not run away. So a year after Gina's disappearance, the police and the FBI, they put together a composite sketch of who they believe this abductor could be, and they put it out into the media, press, etc. So they say that this abductor was male, Latino. They believed he was 25 to 35 years old and around 5'10" in height. Now, they also believe that he would be around 165 to 185 pounds, which, looking at the police sketch, which I will put up, it's giving inaccurate, because I'm pretty sure Ariel Castro was a bit more on the curvy side and they've gave him this really slim face, which he didn't have. And honestly, Ariel Castro probably seen this sketch on the news and was like, oh, so you think I'm skinny? Now, the police, they had also said that he would have green eyes, a goatee, and possibly a pencil-thin beard. Now, Ariel Castro, he wasn't 5'10", he was 5'7", and he didn't have green eyes, he had brown eyes. And, his weight, I'd say it fluctuates over what they listed it as, but all in all, the description was kind of there. Now, Amanda and Gina's family, they would host vigils for Amanda and Gina, in their remembrance, to keep the case alive, to hopefully one day have their daughters found. Now, Ariel Castro, he admitted that he attended at least 2 of these vigils. He even participated in the search party. And what is absolutely sick and twisted is he tried his best to get close to Gina DeJesus' family. What kind of sick freak does this? Now, what I also find very eerie is that Ariel Castro's son, Anthony Castro, he was a student journalist, and he was actually doing a paper on the disappearance of Gina DeJesus. Now, Anthony Castro, he referred to Gina DeJesus as a family friend, and he would even interview Gina's mother, who was grieving so heavily at this point. Her mother, Nancy Ruiz, she gave an interview for his paper. Now, Anthony also recalled at one point, he said to his father, Ariel Castro, that he believed Gina DeJesus must be dead. And Ariel was just kind of sitting there oh really? You think she might be dead? Now, the cases of Amanda and Gina, they would actually be profiled on the Oprah Winfrey Show and also the Montel Williams Show. Now, on this show, and this is absolutely vile, but on this show, a self-proclaimed psychic medium, Sylvia Brown, she would tell Amanda Berry's mother, her mother, that Amanda was dead and in the water. Can you believe this? Could you, what kind of sick freak who is a self-proclaimed psychic who knows that they're not actually psychic tells the mother of a missing girl that her daughter is dead and in the water? Are you kidding me? Now, this revelation from this supposed psychic, this shattered Amanda's mother into 1,000 pieces, or 1,000,000 pieces. We can't even say how many pieces because this completely broke this woman. And she started taking down Amanda's photos. She gave away Amanda's computer because she truly believed that her daughter very well could be dead now. And she had spent so long looking for answers, searching for answers, that when she finally got some kind of answer, she held on to that and she believed that her daughter could very well be dead. I'm going to try and say this bit and hold my composure because when I read this, it really got to me. So, Amanda Berry's mother, she would pass away in 2006 from heart failure. Some people claim it was like a broken heart. And she died believing that her daughter was dead. And Amanda is held in captivity, thinking about getting home to her mother. And her mother dies believing that her daughter's dead. It's just horrible. This psychic, I hope she faced severe consequences, because how dare you take away a mother's hope when you have no idea. I'm so complete sicko who just wanted to be in the limelight, using someone's grief, a family's grief of their missing daughter, to push herself into the limelight. Of course, people, after such a long period of time, they're starting to lose a bit of hope that these women will return home safely. Years are passing by for these women who are locked behind these doors, who haven't seen sunlight in years, and they're enduring this horrific and horrifying sexual and physical torture. They're having to watch life continue as normal for people on the outside, whilst they're held captive, being tortured by this complete monster. Ariel Castro made them watch the wedding of William and Kate, the royal wedding. They were made to watch that, watching all these people celebrating, having a good day, celebrating the new prince and princess, and they are in the worst position ever. And you know what? It's so sickening, the fact that the FBI and the police could not give these women the airtime that they deserved, especially Michelle Knight, who basically got no airtime, let's be honest. And yet there was a televised segment for the royal wedding. Now, what we need to remember about these women, these young women who are held captive by this maniac, is they're smart. Each and every single one of them are described as being smart and bright and having big futures ahead of them. So over time, they start to learn the ways of the house. They start to learn how Ariel Castro operates. They very quickly realise that he was a sadist that got off on their physical and emotional pain. So these young women, they start to find a way to mask that pain, to not give him that pleasure that he so desperately craves. And they learned how to hide their inner feelings, how to hide that inner torment that they were experiencing. These young women, they were able to keep this horrific turmoil that they were feeling and facing deep inside up until something changed. Now, as you can probably imagine, the countless rapes that these young women were subjected to over the course of years, this could result in pregnancy. And it did. And Amanda Berry, she would fall pregnant with Castro's child. Now, Castro, he made it very clear to these women that he did not want to have a baby with any of them. Maybe stop raping them, you sick asshole. That might help. Like, when these women are falling pregnant, he's acting shocked. Like, oh my, how did that happen? Be so for real, you know? Although he didn't want a child, when Amanda Berry fell pregnant, he decided you know what, yeah, let's keep this child. I want you to take this pregnancy to term, and if you lose this baby, I'll kill you. Now, when it was time for Amanda Berry to give birth to their child, Castro forced Michelle Knight, because she was already a mother to her son Joey, he forced her to assist in the delivery of the baby. Now, Castro told Michelle, if this baby is born and it's dead, I will murder you. This is on you to deliver this baby safely. And then it goes from not just only murdering Michelle, he said that he would murder all 3 women if Michelle failed. Bearing in mind Amanda Berry has been abused all throughout her pregnancy, she was still facing beatings, and yet this all came down to Michelle. Now Amanda, she was forced to give birth in a child's paddling pool. Now the reason for this is Castro was like, well, I don't want all that stuff on the floor. I want to keep my house clean and tidy. I don't want it to be a mess with all of that. Says the man who has plastic buckets overflowing with feces and urine because he's too lazy to empty them. Like, okay mate, I believe that you care about the cleanliness of your house. Absolute freak. So Michelle, she is assisting on this birth. She is doing absolutely everything she possibly can to make sure this baby survives. Now, when the baby's born, everything seems to be okay, when suddenly the baby girl stops breathing. Now, Michelle, she looks up in horror at Amanda. She looks up at Castro, who is absolutely infuriated. And she quickly starts performing CPR on this baby girl. And miraculously, this little girl would survive. Michelle was able to resuscitate this little baby. Now, this baby girl, she would be called Jocelyn, and as she grew up, she was forced to call Castro dad and daddy and father and whatever else. And Castro, I mean, he really put on a show trying to play the doting father. He would take baby Jocelyn to his mother to go and visit, and he would say, oh, this is my daughter, she was born from a previous relationship that I was in. This is my day to take her, look at her, so beautiful. He would even show his own children photos of baby Jocelyn and claim the very same, that she was born from a previous relationship. Now listen, all of these women, they were treated horrifically. But Michelle Knight, she seemed to get the brunt of it all. She always seemed to get the worst. And this is because she was very rebellious against Castro. She had no desire to listen to a word this man said. She also wouldn't call him by his name. She would refer to him as dude. Like, just ways to humiliate him, and he hated this. She would talk back to him. She would fight him off. Like, all these things that Castro felt made him look a bit weak. Because Castro, he can dish it out, but he can't take it, which is always the case with these freaks. Now Castro, he would punish Michelle anytime she acted out. So he would beat her profusely. He would take her to the basement and hoist her up on that support beam by her hands and just leave her there. He would also withhold food from her, starving her for days on end. And he would also beat and rape Michelle repeatedly, sometimes one after the other. Now Michelle, devastatingly, she would become pregnant by Castro at least 5 times. And each time, this sick freak would beat her so severely to induce a miscarriage. And devastatingly, Michelle would miscarry each pregnancy. Now, to induce these miscarriages, Castro, he would beat Michelle's stomach with weighted dumbbells. And if that wasn't enough, he would severely, brutally beat her stomach with his own fists, sometimes having her hanging from that support beam, whilst he continued to punch and berate her stomach. He slammed her against walls, he starved her, and she had actually been so severely beaten, even around her face and head, that she would lose hearing in one of her ears. And she was beaten so badly around her stomach that she suffered from permanent damage. Now at this point, Michelle and Gina, they are usually kept with each other, and Amanda Berry, she's kept in a separate room all by herself with her daughter Jocelyn. Now they were locked inside, they weren't allowed to interact with the other women. Amanda Berry, she would do her best to teach Jocelyn how to read and write, and every single weekday, she would take a walk around the room with Jocelyn, pretending to walk her to school before they studied her reading and writing, just to try and have some normalcy for this little girl. But of course, there's only so much normalcy you can get when you're subjected to living in a locked room in the same four walls every single day. Now, whilst in the captivity of Castro, Amanda Berry, she kept a very detailed journal, and in this journal she would detail every single time Castro would beat or rape her. Now, Gina De Jesus, she did face the same fate as these women. She was raped and beaten severely, and this would happen on a very, very frequent basis for Gina. Despite the amount of times that she was raped, she doesn't believe that she was ever pregnant by Castro, thankfully. Now, Gina's family, they are still out looking for her every single day. They are still hopeful that she is out there somewhere. Little do they know just how close by Gina is, and little do they know that she has been taken by a man that they know. Now, one day, Nancy Ruiz, who is Gina De Jesus' mother, she is out handing out flyers, sticking flyers up to help try and find Gina. And who does she run into but Ariel Castro? Ariel Castro takes one of these flyers from Gina's mother. He then goes back to his house and he shoves the flyer in Gina's face. What these women faced on a daily basis for years and years and years on end is absolutely unfathomable, and the fact that they had the strength to endure and get through this is a miracle in itself. With every single passing year, these women, they thought imprisonment would never end. They never expected to see their family and friends or even daylight again until May the 6th of 2013. Now, on this day, May the 6th of 2013, Michelle Knight had stated she felt like something was off. She felt like something was different, and she had a feeling that something very big was going to happen this day. But she could never have guessed what it would be. On this morning, Ariel Castro, he leaves the house and he forgets for the very first time to lock the door behind him. So Amanda's little girl Jocelyn, she heads downstairs, right? She walks out the room, goes downstairs, and she notices that Castro's nowhere to be seen. So she heads back up the stairs into Amanda's room and she says, Amanda, I don't find Daddy. Daddy's nowhere to be seen. Mom, Daddy's car's gone. And immediately Amanda's like, my room door's unlocked. He's not in. This could be the only chance we have to possibly escape. This was the first time in 10 years that these doors had been left unlocked. This was the first time in 10 years where these women might get some freedom. Amanda Berry, she's thinking, you know what, I could die in here anyway, and I would rather die trying to save myself, my daughter, and these other women. This might be the only chance she gets to escape with her life. And so she bravely stands up and she heads out that door and down the stairs and approaches the front door. Now, the front door, this was unlocked, but Amanda believed that this had been wired with an alarm that would signal to Castro if the door was tried. Now, the storm door on the outside, this was padlocked, but you could easily fit your hand through it. So at this point, Amanda's thinking, this must be a test. Castro is probably waiting somewhere in the house, or he's waiting outside on us to try this, and then he's going to beat and possibly kill us. However, when Amanda had seen one of Castro's neighbours, she just knew it was the moment. She needed to try. So Amanda, she opens the front door and she sticks her arm outside of the storm door through the padlock by the chain, and she's waving and she is begging and pleading and screaming for help. And Amanda is screaming, she's like, somebody please, somebody help me. I'm Amanda Berry, please help me. A man by the name of Charles Ramsey, who was a neighbour in the area, he immediately ran over. He helped Amanda break down this door, and he called 911. Now, the phone was then passed to Amanda Berry, and she says to the police, I'm Amanda Berry, I've been kidnapped for 10 years and I'm free now. She begged the police to hurry, and she also made them aware of the other women who were still locked up in their bedrooms. She told the police that they had to be quick and that these women were in desperate need of help. Now, Michelle, she wasn't entirely sure of what's going on, right? But she's hearing all this banging and she's thinking to herself, Amanda's been caught. Castro's come back and Amanda is now being severely punished for trying to escape. However, just minutes later, the police, they break down the door that Michelle is being held in. They storm into the room and Michelle just falls into their arms crying. She cannot believe she's been saved. Now the police, they also go into Gina's room and they get her free as well. And these young women, they walk outside together and for the first time in over a decade, they see sunlight. They feel the heat from the sun on their skin. Something that seems so small to us but was so huge to them that they never thought they'd experience again. And that very day that those women earned their freedom, Ariel Castro would lose his. He was sitting in a McDonald's parking lot that morning when he would be swarmed by multiple police cars. And the police, they immediately arrested him. Then on May the 8th, he would be charged with 4 counts of kidnapping and 3 counts of rape. Each of these convictions would carry a sentence of 10 to life. On May the 9th, Castro would attend court and his bail was set at $2 million per each kidnapping charge, so accumulating to $8 million. Why they even set a bail, I don't know, because there should have been no option for bail, but it was unattainable for him, so it's fine. Now, the prosecution, they were very eager to seek the death penalty. My kind of people. Now, additional charges would be brought against Castro, and these included aggravated murder, which was for the induced miscarriages, attempted murder, assault, a charge for each instance of rape, which they were able to conclude with Amanda Berry's journal, and also a kidnapping charge for each single day that passed that these women were held in captivity. 10 years. Now, a true bill of indictment against Castro would be returned on June the 7th, and this contained 329 separate counts. Now, on June the 12th, Castro entered a plea of not guilty. And do you know what he said? He said that he was as much of a victim as these women were, and he was a victim of his own sex addiction, which caused him to hold these women captive, but he was a prisoner of his own mind. What? Then, Castro, he tries to claim these crimes aren't even as bad as what they sound. These women, they're hamming it up for attention. Like they're not bad. The sex encounters that we had, they were all consensual. And actually a lot of the time, I was having to push the women off because they wanted sex with me all the time. How deluded is this frizzy electrocuted hair man? Delulu. So on July the 17th, Castro, he would plead not guilty to the expanded indictment, which had 977 charges. However, he was made aware that if he was found guilty of all these charges and he had pled not guilty, he would face a lethal injection. And cowardly Castro did not want this. So instead, as part of a plea bargain, on July the 26th, Castro pled guilty to 937 of the 977 counts. He was given consecutive sentences of life in prison plus 1,000 years. With the plea bargain, he also forfeited his right to appeal. He also forfeited his right to any of his possessions. So his house, for instance, prosecution claimed that would be getting demolished, and he just had to be like, okay. When police raided Castro's house, they had actually found an exit plan, which basically was him saying that he was going to commit suicide if he was caught because he couldn't face time in jail. He wouldn't survive in jail. Now, on September the 3rd of 2013, at the Correctional Reception Centre in Orion, Ohio, cowardly Castro would be found hanging in his cell by bedsheets, just 1 month into his life sentence. He was that much of a coward that he couldn't even hack 1 month in prison without taking his life. What a coward. Like, you're telling me that you abuse, torture and rape women for almost 11 years and you can't face prison time when your conditions in your cell are going to be far better than the conditions that you subjected those women to, but you can't even face that? Strap on a pair. Now, Castro, he was 53 at the time of his death. At this point, most of his family had disowned him anyway, so he wasn't going to get any prison visits. And many believe that he had actually died accidentally from autoerotic asphyxiation, which we covered. I want to say it was possibly Gerard Schaefer, or was it Fred West who was into all of that? I can't remember, but his death would ultimately be ruled as a suicide. Listen, I'm happy. I'm chuffed to bits that this man is dead, right? Love to hear it. But my God, I wish he had suffered, because what he done to these women, and what he might have done to even more women over time, he should have suffered the worst kind of torture that you can put on anyone. And he got off so easily for what he done to these women. Now, I will say the three of these young women, they went on to live their lives. Michelle Knight, she had wrote a memoir of her time, which you can actually buy and read. Gina and Amanda, they had co-written a memoir. These women who are absolute heroes and exhibit strength like we cannot even believe. To endure what they did for 10, almost 11 years and come out the other end, be good people, do great things, build their families. These women are incredible. And I send so much love and prayer to them and their families. And I just hope that they were able to rebuild these relationships that they had with their families before they were horrifically abducted and tortured by this evil man. But my loves, that is the end of another true crime and makeup episode. And I have to say, it was really nice to have a happy ending. I know they've endured the worst possible torture and brutality that we could imagine, but ultimately, these women came out with their lives and they are doing great things, and we love to hear it. And I'm so glad that it did have a happy ending. Before we go, please don't forget to leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts, feelings and opinion on this case. If you do enjoy my content, please don't forget to subscribe, put the notification bell on so you don't miss when I upload, which is every single Wednesday and Sunday. If you're interested in anything that I've used on my face today, it will all be linked in the description and down below. If you do want to reach out in the meantime, I would suggest, going over to my Instagram, giving that a wee follow, maybe my TikTok as well. And you can always send me a DM. I chat to you quite a lot in my DMs and I love it. So I'd love to have you over there. As always, thank you so much for all of the love and support that you provide on this channel, and to me, it means the entire world to me, and I am so bloody lucky that I have people like you, and I genuinely love and adore each and every single one of you so much. But that is it for today, my loves. Please remember, be a good person, do not be a bad person, stay safe, look after each other, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! So I'm kind of thinking that I maybe want to do a green and black look today. I can't put down the dark lipstick, I cannot step away from it when I'm doing these videos, and it's not something I would wear outside, so it's quite nice to get a bit creative on camera. But thinking green and black, I have a vision, but at the same time I don't really, so we're just going to wing this. So Jennifer Daugherty, she was born on November the 8th of 1979, and she was born in Mount Pleasant of Pennsylvania. In their home, she had lived with her mother Denise and her stepfather Bobby Murphy. She had two sisters by the name of Joy and Jamie, and also a stepbrother by the name of Dave. Now, Dave was Bobby's son. Why could I not think there? But Dave was Bobby's son. And Jennifer had two gorgeous little nieces that she completely adored, named Brianne and Bailey. And then she also had a little nephew called Dylan. Now, anytime someone spoke about Jennifer, all they could say was nice things about her. She was extremely kind, she was loving, she was caring, she was so outgoing. She wanted to be friends with anyone. She was also extremely trusting in nature, and she just believed that everyone had the best intentions in the way that she did, which of course we know isn't true. And if anyone was unkind or nasty to Jennifer just assumed that they were having a bad day, and she would try harder to be even nicer to them to see if she could make their day better. Another thing about Jennifer is she really craved friendship. She so badly wanted to belong to a group of people who loved and accepted her the way that she did with everyone else. And in her childhood and even adolescence and adulthood, Jennifer had so many different interests. She really enjoyed watching scary movies, which, oh my god, we could totally bond over because scary movies are like the only movies I watch. She also enjoyed wrestling and also had a passion for college football. She would watch like every single game that came on. And when asked about her, Jennifer's mother had said that she was extremely outgoing. She was really fun. She made friends very, very easily. And she just loved to sing and dance. But the main thing about Jennifer was the kindness that she brought to people. She was like a sunshine, like a ray of sunshine in everyone's day. And when she met, you know, good people who were nice and kind like she was, they would bond straight away. But the only thing that Jennifer had to be careful of is that people didn't take advantage of her kindness and of her good nature. And Jennifer, she was this sunshine and rainbow for people, but she hadn't had the easiest life either. I mean, Denise and Bobby, they had given her a great childhood. They raised her so well. As a human, her soul was so pure. But the thing that would be a struggle for Jennifer is she did have a mental disability, and this really impaired her cognitive function. So at the time when Jennifer had her life stolen from her, she would be 30 years old with the mind of a 12 to 14-year-old. So like that is half her age. Actually, sorry, that is more than half her age at that point. So while she might seem like a grown woman, a grown adult, she was very much still naive and innocent, and she doesn't really see that there are really bad, unkind, nasty monsters in this world. Jennifer, despite her mental disability, this did not hold her back. Like, she still had the most positive outlook on life. Like, she was truly inspirational, and she always had this longing for a sense of independence. And you know, she wanted to live her life as normally as her peers did. She wanted to have friends, she wanted to have boyfriends, like she just wanted to live a normal, happy life. And Denise and Bobby, they trusted her. Of course they did. Like, Jennifer has given them no reason to not trust her. But they couldn't trust other people. And of course, with Jennifer's mental disability, it did make her more vulnerable. And, you know, they did have to look after her. But they still wanted to grant her that independence that she had longed for. There was even talks that in the future she might be able to live by herself, get herself a nice little apartment. They would have helped her. And this was all things that Jennifer was striving for in her future. And Jennifer's sister, Joy Daugherty, when speaking about Jennifer and, you know, how she made friends and things like that, Joy did say that Jennifer just wanted to be part of a group. She just wanted to belong to a group, and it didn't really matter who was in that group or what kind of group that was, because Jennifer, as always, is going to see the best in people. So she's not going to see if a group's a bad group, if there's a few bad eggs, or, you know, if they're taking advantage of her. She's not really able to decipher the good from the bad. So as I was saying, with Bobby and Denise, they want Jennifer to be able to live independently. They really do. They want her to have the life that she wants. And whilst they would take care of things like her finances, just to make sure she wasn't being reckless or giving money away and things like that, they would look after her financial affairs. They even got her benefits payments that she was entitled to. And this ultimately gave Jennifer a bit more freedom to do the things that she wanted because she had money to do them. And a lot of these things that Jennifer wanted to do, she could go off and do by herself. So there she is, getting that bit of independence, but still being closely watched by her family just to make sure everything is okay. And honestly, Bobby and Denise could not have done a better job with Jennifer. Like, there was nothing that they could have done in this situation to prevent what happened to Jennifer, because they truly did and gave Jennifer everything that she would ever need. And whilst Jennifer did struggle with certain aspects in her life, she was more than capable. Like, she could utilise public transport to get herself to her dental and doctor's appointments in Greensburg, which is around 10 miles from Mount Pleasant of Pennsylvania. So she would take the bus, go there by herself, and also come back by herself. And her mum and dad really trusted her doing that because she had done it so many times before, and she proved that she was ready. Now, Jennifer had told her family as well that while she had been in Greensburg, she had actually made friends while she had been there, and she kind of made them aware of this in early February of 2010. And as I had said, Jennifer would go there quite frequently for, dental appointments, doctor's appointments, counselling appointments, and while she had been here, she had met quite a few of this group at a community centre, and this community centre did have groups focused on people with disabilities or mental disorders. Now, the first friend that Jennifer had made was a woman by the name of Peggy Darlene Miller. Now, her and Jennifer had met at the community centre that I was just talking about. Now, Bobby and Denise, whilst they are happy that Jennifer has made friends and seems, to be quite happy with the situation, they can't help but wonder, what is this group's intentions? Who are these people? What are they like? Do they treat Jennifer well? Are they actually nice people? Or does Jennifer just think they're nice? Because Jennifer thinks everyone's nice. And whilst they do have these concerns, which is obviously very normal for parents in their position, they're also really happy for Jennifer because they can tell how happy she is that she's made this group of friends. And after all, this is something that she's longed for the longest time, to have a group that she's friends with, to have a group to belong to. And Jennifer right now feels like she's maybe found that. So I just want to do a little disclaimer here. The timeline for this particular date, it gets a bit murky. So some sources say it was the 8th of February 2010 and other sources say it was the 9th of February 2010. We do know the date that things took place and the date when Jennifer would be discovered, but the date of when it initially happened, I'm not entirely sure. If you know, please leave it below and I'll pin the comment, but I tried my hardest to find it and for the love of God, could not. Most sources that I've read say the 9th, so I'm going to go with that, but please do correct me if it's wrong. So on the 9th of February 2010, Jennifer tells her mum and dad that she wants to go and stay at a friend's apartment. This friend is Peggy. So Jennifer says to her parents that this apartment was over in Greensburg, which worked out perfectly for her because the very next day she had a doctor's appointment that she had to attend. So it works out well. She'll go to the sleepover, be with her friend during the day, go to her doctor's appointment and then head back home to Mount Pleasant on the bus. So on the morning of this trip, Jennifer takes an envelope to write a little note to her parents on the back of it. So she basically writes down the contact details and the address for Peggy's apartment, which obviously gives her parents this false sense of security because they know if they need to get to Jennifer, they know where to go. If they're a bit anxious and want to talk to her, they can give her a call there. With the address, Jennifer had also left a note for her parents to say, "I hope that you will have a very good day at work and I also love you very much. I will talk to you sometime later." This note, this would be the last communication that they would have with Jennifer. So Bobby, Jennifer's stepfather, he takes her to the bus station to drop her off. She gives him a kiss on the cheek, she says goodbye, and then off she goes to head for her bus. And this whole experience for Jennifer should have been amazing. It should have been lovely. She should have had the best time. But this time at the bus station with Jennifer was the last time that Bobby would ever see his stepdaughter alive. And the note that was left for Denise is the last thing she would hear from her daughter. Now it would turn out, however, that the apartment that Jennifer was going to didn't actually belong to Peggy. It belonged to a man by the name of Ricky Smyrns, or Smyrns, or Smirnoff, I don't know, right, I can't say his name, and I don't care about learning his name because he is a complete evil, vile monster. And it would later be said that it hadn't actually been Peggy that was texting Jennifer to lure her to the apartment. It had apparently been Ricky. So when Jennifer arrived to the apartment, there would be, quite a big group of individuals there. I mean, including Peggy and excluding Jennifer, there would be 6 individuals, so Jennifer would make it 7. So there was Ricky Smyrns, obviously it's his apartment, Peggy, Robert Lauren Masters Jr., Melvin Knight, Amber Meidinger, again, the monster, don't care, and also Angela Marinucci, who Jennifer had actually known for a couple of years. And of course, walking into such a big group for someone like Jennifer, this made her happy. And devastatingly, unbeknownst to Jennifer, these 6 monsters that sat in front of her, they would be the reason that she would lose her life. They would steal her life away from her. And before we do get any further into the case, I just want to quickly go through these 6 sick monsters, who they are, and what we know about them. So starting off with Amber Meidinger. She was born on January 12th of 1990 and she was a girlfriend of Melvin Knight. Now Melvin Knight, he was born on the 27th of October of 1989 and Melvin did have somewhat of a troubled childhood. His father was in prison for most of his childhood and Melvin had also had an accident at the age of 5 where he had fallen out of a moving truck and hit his skull off the concrete. And with this injury, he did end up with lifelong learning and social problems. So Amber and Melvin, they had met at a homeless shelter in January of 2010. Now Melvin, let's just say mischievous Melvin, he was no stranger to breaking the law and he had actually met Ricky Smirnoff, whatever you want to call him. They had actually met each other whilst they were serving a sentence in the same prison. Prison besties. Now I will say we do seem to have the most information on Ricky Smirns. I don't know why that is. I think it is because there's maybe a lot more happened in his childhood. But he was born on March 6th of 1986. And it has been reported that his mother was a drug addict and also a sex worker, and his father was apparently a gang member in a gang in Pittsburgh. Now, throughout his childhood, he would be in and out of foster care homes. He was also being treated for various mental illnesses since the age of 4. And Ricky Smirns, his family was apparently filled with neglect and physical abuse, and this would last up until the age of 10 when he would be taken in by the Smirns family. Now, Ricky would also claim that he suffered from physical and sexual abuse at the hands of his father and uncle, and he said by the age of 6 he had tasted beer, he had tried cocaine, he had tried heroin, and apparently he was smoking marijuana at the age of 6. And Ricky, he even had a protective order filed against him by his ex-girlfriend because he had smashed a water pitcher over her head before then attempting to rape her. He is sick, evil and vile, cannot say it enough. And his ex-girlfriend had stated that Ricky would be particularly scary and abusive when he wasn't taking his medication. Even Ricky's own mother was so scared of him, she was terrified. And one time Ricky had even threatened to kill his mother when she had went over to his apartment to get back her items that he had stole from her. The audacity of this man, he's like, Mum, what do you mean you're coming to collect items that I stole from you? How dare you? Rude. Now, also another important thing to note is at the time that Jennifer was devastatingly and horrifically murdered, Ricky was actually married with a child, but he was also dating Angela within this little monstrous group. Then we've got Angela Marinucci, who was born on July the 14th of 1992. Now, she had also suffered from a head injury, but this was at the age of 15 when she was apparently hit by a truck. What is it with trucks in Pennsylvania? Are you all not driving safe when you're doing truck work? But also, low-key, if you're a truck driver in Pennsylvania and if you did hit Angela or Melvin, you should have reversed and ran back over them. Who said that? Me. According to Angela's mother and her sister, they said that Angela's behaviour completely altered once she had this head injury and she was severely depressed, which made her turn to alcohol and drugs at a very, very young age. And listen, I just want to say, it's okay for you to feel bad for these people in their childhood. You're allowed to feel bad for people for having a crappy childhood, but we cannot excuse what they do later in life, because I, and I'm sure you, know people who have had a terrible, horrific childhood, who've grown up to be these amazing people who care for others, look after people, love them unconditionally. We all know people like that, or maybe you are that person that had a crappy childhood who came out the other end and vowed to never treat anyone else that way. These rubbish, crappy childhoods cannot be used as an excuse for who these adults end up being and the crimes that they end up committing, because we all know someone, or we are someone who has suffered very much the same, or sometimes even worse, and we come out the other end and decide that we're not going to be that way. we're not going to let that define us. You can have a crappy childhood and be the most amazing person in this world, and that is why we can never excuse these monsters. And I will be honest, I wasn't really able to find much on Robert Masters or Peggy Miller, but I did get their date of birth, so like, counts for something, right? So Robert, he was born on December the 22nd of 1973, and Peggy, she was born on February the 3rd of 1983. And bearing in mind, Peggy is the one that Jennifer's known for a long time, the one who she originally formed a friendship with when they had met at a community centre for people with mental disabilities and mental disorders. So it's February 8th of 2010, and Ricky, he meets up with Amber and Melvin. Now, Amber at this point, she is pregnant with Melvin's child, and they had been staying at a hotel in Greensburg, and when Ricky hears this, he's like, oh, I'm friend of the year, why don't you two come and stay with me at my apartment? Amber and Melvin, they're thinking, this is great, and it would be nice to, have friends around us whilst we're going through this growth of a child. Yeah, sure, we'll come over. And you know what? Amber also knew Jennifer from one of these facilities that they had both frequented. So sometime before this date, Jennifer was talking to Amber, because like I said, they knew each other from the facility. So they're talking to each other and they're having, kind of like gossip. Jennifer's getting all excited because she's just gossiping away, as we all do. And she apparently, and let me state, apparently tells Amber that she's going to marry Ricky Smarns. Now, who overheard this but Angela? At this point, no one knows that Angela and Ricky are dating beside Ricky and Angela. And Angela gets her wee panties in a knot. She's like, oh my god, Jennifer's making moves on my man, we can't be having that. So Angela at this point is absolutely fuming, because what do you mean Jennifer apparently wants to marry Ricky, who belongs to her? I think Ricky might belong to his wife, who he is married to. You don't own him. It belongs to no one actually, because he's no loyal to anyone. Now listen, my question is, did Jennifer really say this? Did she actually say this, or is this all just a big fat lie that they use to try and excuse their disgusting and evil behaviour toward her? And even if Jennifer did say it, is it really that deep? After all, Ricky's a married man. Jennifer, let's remember, has the thinking and understanding of a 12 to 14-year-old. That sounds to me like a young girl with fantasies. We've all done it. We've all said, oh, I'm going to marry Sylvester Stallone. Maybe that's just very niche for me, but he was my dream man. But we've all said it. Am I going to marry Sylvester Stallone? No, of course I'm not. Like, it's all said in childlike innocence and fantasy, and we have all done it. So at this point, Amber notices that her friend Angela is quite upset, right? So her and Ange, they go away and have a little chat, and this is when Angela tells Amber that she is in a relationship with Ricky Smirnoff. And when Angela tells Amber this, Amber's like quite shook because, what do you mean you're dating her friend who is a married man? Now, at one point, Amber says that she overhears Angela on a phone call to Ricky, and she hears Angela say, you better not be with that bitch. Language. And obviously at this point, Amber's thinking that she is meaning Jennifer, because Jennifer had apparently said that she wanted to marry Ricky. And do you know what? Do you know what's even more crazy? Is reports claim that Ricky had actually told Jennifer that he loved her and that he wanted to marry her too. But I don't know if that was kind of like entrapment. Like he was trying to get Jennifer under his spell as well. And the thing is, it could be possible. It could be possible that Jennifer said she wanted to marry Ricky. Because let's remember, people, she has the mind of a 12 to 14-year-old. She wants to be accepted. She wants to be loved. She wants to be adored. Is that a song? Is that the Stone Roses? Anyway, she does. She wants to be adored. And if Ricky's, giving her all of this emotion and feeling, then yeah, she might believe that she loves Ricky. Now, it would be after all of this that the six of them would head back to Ricky's apartment, and that is when the call was made from Ricky to Jennifer, inviting her to stay over at the apartment. And in my honest opinion, this is how we know that this murder is absolutely premeditated. It just seems like there's been so much thought, so much conversation going on behind the scenes. This is 100% premeditated, and they try and claim that it's not. Like, just own it. Strap on a pair and say it with your chest. Now, of course, because Jennifer's been invited over by a boy, she doesn't exactly want to say to Denise and Bobby that a boy's invited her over to stay, because most likely they wouldn't have allowed that, and rightfully so. Like, Jennifer is such a vulnerable person, like, they can't really afford to take risks of her going and staying with people that they don't know, especially boys. Now, I just want to point out that we will never truly know what events transpired that night, because all we have is the statements from the 6 monsters who committed this horrific evil crime. And of course, with Jennifer no longer being here to tell us the true facts, we'll never really know. But this is apparently how everything went down. Can we just also ignore the fact that I've stained my under eyes green from dropping all the green eyeshadow on me? Kind of looking like a, what is it? Mutant Ninja Turtle? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Heroes in a half shell. Yep, that just came right back from my childhood. So Ricky, who clearly thinks he's some kind of stud, he says that Jennifer had made advances to him that night. Jennifer had apparently asked Ricky to have sex with her. And apparently Ricky, he outright refused, and he was furious that she would even say this because he has a girlfriend and a wife. Now, despite Ricky being, apparently furious with Jennifer, Jennifer did still decide to go ahead and stay at the apartment that night. Again, the way Jennifer is and how her brain works, she maybe did think that she had done something wrong to Ricky, and most likely she would have been acting extra nice and really trying to make it up to him, even though she hadn't done anything wrong. Jennifer, she gets up and she goes for a shower. Now, when she hops in the shower, this is when Ricky decides that it would be a very good time to call Angela and let Angela be aware of the sexual advances that Jennifer had apparently made. So Angela hears this and she is absolutely furious. Like, how dare someone want to have sex with my boyfriend, even when he has a wife? And honestly, I just want to be like, Ange, you do understand that his wife most likely doesn't want him having sex with you either. So, like, take your head out your ass, okay? You're no important here. So Angela, absolutely fuming on the phone, she says to Ricky, do not let Jennifer leave that apartment because I'm coming over to fight her. Calm down. Oh, take a break, have a Kit Kat, like, the drama. At the apartment at this time, the entirety of the group was present, apart from Angela, who was still storming over. Like, she's on her way, but she's And devastatingly, this would be when the most horrific crimes imaginable are committed to Jennifer. Once Angela gets there, everything just gets so sinister so quick. So the group, they're waiting on Angela arriving, and they decide in the meantime, this is when they're going to start tormenting Jennifer. So Jennifer's still in the shower at this point, and the group, they ransack her purse. They poured mouthwash and toothpaste into her purse. Melvin grabs the cash and also any gift cards that she has in her purse. Amber then proceeds to take Jennifer's cell phone, and then the group ruin all of Jennifer's clothes. They pour mouthwash and toothpaste over them as well and proper smear it in with their hands so it's like impossible to get off. And like, to some people this kind of thing might not seem like that big of a deal, but see, to me, I just think it's so humiliating. That's exactly what they're doing at this point in time. They're trying to humiliate her. Like, she's gonna walk out, they're all laughing and joking, all of her clothes are ruined, her purse is ruined, her stuff's been stolen. It's just like that ultimate humiliation that just makes you feel like, I'm actually not part of this group. Like, these people don't actually like me. So Jennifer, she's out the shower and she comes through and, sees what they've done. And Melvin, he then turns to Jennifer, hands her some money, which is the money he stole from her purse, hands her money back, and demands that she goes and buys him cigarettes. And to start with, Jennifer's kind of like, no, like, I'm not going to go out and get you cigarettes. Like, I've just been in the shower. Like, I just want to relax. Still with this innocence and naivety about her. But she gets this vibe that bad things could happen if she doesn't do what she's told, and she just wants to make everyone happy. So she takes the money and apparently she goes off to get Melvin his cigarettes, and then she returns home with them. Now, when Jennifer has returned to the apartment, Ricky and Melvin, they start throwing plastic bottles at her head continuously, and the rest of the group, they're all laughing away thinking this is hilarious, whilst Jennifer starts to get really distressed. They won't stop, and eventually, apparently, Jennifer whispered under her breath, calling them assholes. Quite rightly so. Hearing this, Melvin and Ricky, they grow furious. How dare she speak back to them? Melvin in particular, he flies into this complete rage. He gets Jennifer, shoves her up against the wall, and begins to strangle her. And he just keeps going and keeps going until Jennifer eventually just crumbles to the ground and bursts out in tears. How could her friend do this to her? Why would he do this to her? What has she done to deserve that? And it's horrifying because once this terrifying ordeal was over for Jennifer, the terror had really only just begun. And then in barges Storm Angela, just ready to put the house up in the air. She is still absolutely fuming with what she's heard about Jennifer. So once she arrives, she forces Jennifer into the bathroom alongside Amber. She's confronting Jennifer, and then she proceeds to hit Jennifer over the head with a metal towel rack 3 times and then starts punching her in the chest. Now Angela, the twisted, evil, sick little rat that she is, she tells Amber that not only does Jennifer love Ricky, she also loves Melvin and wants to sleep with him. Jennifer completely denies this. She says it's not true. She actually says that she doesn't like either of them, Ricky or Melvin, does not like them like that, because she's a loyal friend. But Amber and Angela were not hearing any of this. And at this point, Ricky and Melvin, they decide that they're going to join in. They want to get in on this sick torture. So they come through and they drag Jennifer out of the bathroom, and then they proceed to pour water, spices, oatmeal all over her head, just again to humiliate her. They then force her to shower with her clothes on, force her to get in the shower and rinse it all off, telling her that she stinks, she smells, she's revolting, she's disgusting, whilst they've did this to her. Once Jennifer was out of the shower after she had rinsed off, the group force her to remove every single bit of her clothing. So she is completely naked now, and they take the clothing from Jennifer and they throw it out the apartment window. Angela and Ricky, they then proceed to cut all of Jennifer's hair off. Her head was essentially shaved, which again is another humiliation tactic. It's like taking away something that identifies her. I know for a fact that my hair for the longest time has been like my identity, right? I've always had really long hair. I don't anymore because I've kind of grown out of that and I did cut quite a lot of it off. But like just a couple of years ago, my hair was down at my bum. And the idea of removing that made me feel like I was losing part of myself. So by doing that is just another way to degrade Jennifer and take away her identity. Once the couple had completely shaven off Jennifer's hair, they then forced Jennifer to clean it up. Basically tell Jennifer, because it's her hair, it's her mess, and she should clean it up. Why would she leave her hair around the apartment? The hair that they removed from her. And devastatingly, once Jennifer had cleaned up all of her hair that Ricky and Angela had cut off, they then take her into the living room where a sock was stuffed into her mouth, and Melvin proceeded to rape her. So now Ricky and Melvin, they forced Jennifer to go up and hide in the attic because the person whose name's on the lease of the apartment, they were coming back to collect some items. So they were like, we need to hide her, we need to get her out of the way so no one suspects what it is that we're doing up here. Now the tenant comes over to collect the stuff, and the group, obviously knowing what they're doing and the fact that Jennifer is in the attic naked with her head shaved and has just been raped, they start getting a bit like ratty with the person that's come over to get their belongings, and they're getting a bit aggressive. So the leaser of the apartment, I don't even know what you say, but they contact the police to come over whilst they're collecting their stuff. So Police come over, they sort out the altercation, and then ultimately the person who is leasing the apartment and the police leave. Jennifer is still there in that attic. Now listen, I don't know if someone was there with her to keep her quiet, but it is just awful to know that help was right below her, but it was still so far away. She could not get help despite it being so close. That in itself is torture. So Ricky, Amber, Melvin and Angela, they all leave for a bit of time to go and pick up Angela's medication because Angela wanted to stay at the apartment that night. So in the meantime, it was Robert and Peggy who was basically put in charge of watching Jennifer. They were given strict instructions that Jennifer is not allowed to leave this apartment. The four of them, they get Angela's medication and they are heading back to the apartment. And this is when Peggy made a phone call to them saying that Jennifer was trying to escape. Now the group tell Peggy, keep her there, do not let her out of your sight, we're on our way back. And the four of them, they sprint in complete desperation because they're no finished with their torture. They want to get back and torture Jennifer some more. So arriving back at the apartment, Ricky and Melvin, they just start to beat Jennifer so brutally. Now Melvin at this point, he's particularly angry because he says that because of Jennifer, Amber, his pregnant girlfriend, passed out on the way here because she had overexerted herself racing back to the apartment. Well Melvin, you complete, utter, monstrous asshole. Your pregnant girlfriend wouldn't have passed out if you weren't racing back home to torture someone. If you weren't torturing someone in the first place, your girlfriend wouldn't have passed out. And it's like, again, they're placing this blame on Jennifer, like Jennifer did something wrong by trying to escape, like the audacity that she wanted to leave this horrific environment and save herself. Now, poor Jennifer, she begged and pleaded with these captors, like they were no longer her friends, and I think she could see that at this point. She begged and pleaded with them to stop. She told them that she had a really, really, really sore head. They fed her bipolar medication, which was going to do absolutely nothing to alleviate the pain that she was feeling, the pain that they had inflicted. After they give her this bipolar medication, the group all head off to bed. They leave Jennifer in the living room, naked, cold, and terrified. So the next morning, the group, they wake up and there's some kind of outburst that takes place over Coke, as in like the drink, I'm assuming. And of course, Jennifer, being their punching bag, starts to get the blame for whatever's happened here. Angela immediately jumps on top of Jennifer, is sitting on top of her and repeatedly punching her in the face. Now Jennifer, who would not hurt a fly, who would not do anything to hurt anyone, she knees Angela in the stomach. And honestly, Jennifer, you shouldn't have stopped there, you should have kept on going. So Angela, who's not pregnant by the way, starts shouting out loud, my baby, you just killed my child, you've killed my baby. What baby? You're not pregnant. And then Melvin, he comes over, he's shouting at Jennifer and he's saying, if you want to kill my kid, why should I let you live? I don't know what the script is here, right? But Angela says to Ricky, you have to choose between me and Jennifer. And Ricky calls what he names a family meeting, right? And at this family meeting, they all wanted to deliberate, what kind of mother would Jennifer be? Where's the relevance? How is that relevant to this? Like, I don't get it. But they're all chatting away, talking about what kind of mother Jennifer would be. And then he holds a second family meeting. And this time he wants some thoughts, feelings and opinions on whether or not Jennifer should get a drink because she said that she's really thirsty. But does she deserve a drink? This is what they're discussing now. This young woman who has done absolutely nothing wrong apart from being a good person, whether she deserves a basic human right. So ultimately the group decide, yeah, okay, Jennifer can have a drink. But these vile monsters, they would make the most horrific drink for Jennifer to consume, and it is just the worst thing you'll hear. So the group yet again have some sick, evil plan and they drag Jennifer through to the bathroom. Now Angela, she had peed in a cup and This is Jennifer's drink. She tries to force it down Jennifer's throat, but Jennifer's not complying. She's trying to fight back, get it away from her. She doesn't want to consume that. And then Amber, she proceeds to pick up the metal towel rack and hit her over the head with it and force it down her throat until she drinks it. Now immediately after this, Jennifer is gagging, she's being sick, she's hanging over the toilet, of course. And this infuriates the group because they think that she is being ungrateful. They think that she has not been grateful enough for this drink that they so kindly gave them. And so they make her another drink. This second drink, this was made up of urine, feces, spices, parsley, garlic, and yet again, Jennifer was held down whilst this is being forced down her throat, and when she's not drinking it, Amber is right there hitting her with the towel rack until she consumes it. And they're not finished here. Not by a long shot, they're not finished. They decide that they're going to make her a third drink because she was still being ungrateful. She didn't appreciate the first drink or the second drink. This third drink would be made up of bleach, washing detergent, water, and then some of Amber's medication, that bipolar medication. She again was being forced to consume this whilst being battered with this metal towel rack, and they kept going until she vomited it all up. And apparently this humiliation that they were putting Jennifer through and this torture that they were putting her through just wasn't enough. They hadn't hurt her enough yet, they hadn't humiliated her enough yet, and so they decide they're going to string her up like a Christmas tree. So they take working Christmas tree lights and they wrap it around her in a way that it looks like she's the Christmas tree. You know, like if she's standing up, it's like wrapped all the way up from her feet to her head. And Angela, when they turn these on, she decides they're not blinking the way that I want them to blink, so we're going to remove them and rewrap them. Then she's like, actually, do you know what? I don't want to rewrap the Christmas lights around her like that. It's not working, so let's just bind her hands and her wrists together. Once Jennifer's wrists and legs were bound together, they then proceed to tie her up with a Christmas garland. And whilst the group is doing this, Peggy, the evil monster that she is painting the entirety of Jennifer's face with nail polish. Could you imagine those fumes all over your face, getting in your eyes, getting in your mouth, up your nose? Like, how can you do this to someone? So Ricky, at this point, he decides that he needs to hold a third family meeting. And this meeting would be to deliberate whether or not they should kill Jennifer. And all six of these monsters, all six of them that had pretended to be her friend, that had lured her here under false pretenses and false hope of friendship, every single one of them voted in favour of murdering Jennifer. Once they had made this decision that they were going to murder Jennifer, they had planned to make it look like a suicide. As if they could get away with that with all the injuries that she's endured. Like, did she cut and shave her own head? Did she beat herself up? Did she string herself up with Christmas lights? Like, honestly, get a brain about you. Like, how do you think this is going to work? But they forced Jennifer to write a suicide note. And I will read just now what this suicide note says, and it's just heartbreaking. So on this suicide note, Jennifer states, I haven't been very happy for a while, and I also feel like everybody will be better off without me on the earth. I will always love my mom and stepdad no matter what, and I will always love the rest of my family also. My nieces and nephews would be lucky to have a better aunt than me. I am done with life. Goodbye. I'm just going to take a second for that because... So Jennifer was then led into the bathroom by this group. Ricky proceeds to hand a steak knife to Melvin and just says, you know what you have to do. At first, Melvin kind of hesitates, but not for very long, and he proceeds to repeatedly stab Jennifer. He stabbed her in the throat, the torso, the chest, and he did this multiple times, and then he says to Ricky, this bitch won't die, even still degrading her while she is dying, while she is slipping out of consciousness because you are taking her life away from her, and yet you are still degrading her. Now, because Jennifer wasn't dying from these injuries, Ricky wanted to speed up this process, and he and Melvin grabbed an end of the Christmas lights, wrapped it around her throat, and then they both pulled in opposite ends to strangle her to death. They hold another family meeting where they discuss what they should do with her body, how should they dispose of her body, and Angela, she says, why don't we take her to the front of a church and set her on fire to burn in front of this church? And they're all kind of giddy, they're all kind of enjoying the thought of this idea, but Ricky and Melvin think, that's too risky. We need to do something that's more discreet. So they choose to wrap Jennifer up in plastic trash bags and throw her in a trash bin on a school parking lot. That was apparently the best way to dispose of Jennifer. So then on Thursday, February the 11th, around 6:30am at the Greensburg Salem Middle School, a truck driver was on his way to work when he realised that there was like a trash bin stuffed under his truck. And of course, if he wanted to get to work, he was going to have to remove this from underneath. So he reaches in and he's pulling on this like trash bin to get it out from under his vehicle. And this is when the lid pops off and he is just hit with this foul, strange odour, which of course was coming from poor Jennifer's body, not just because she was dead, but because of the things that they put on her, the things that they made her eat. There was just this horrific smell. Now this man can see right away that inside here is a body wrapped in trash bags. So the police are called and they arrive shortly after, and Jennifer's body is sent away to a forensic pathologist to, determine what's happened to her. Now luckily there was a snowstorm at this point, so the schools were off, which meant that no school children had to bear witness to this horrific incident. Now the forensic pathologists, they were able to determine that the fatal wound that essentially killed Jennifer was a stab wound that she had received that punctured her left lung and also her heart, and this caused a substantial hemorrhage to take place in her body. Now they did say that the stab wound, but also the amount of drugs in her system was a fatal dose. Actually, it was more than the fatal dose. So that stab wound essentially was the thing that killed her, but if that hadn't, it's likely that the drug overdose would have. Now I'm sure we all know what it's like when something happens, news spreads like wildfire, and once the story gets out, the police, they start receiving these reports from occupants of the apartment complex. They tell police that during the night they were hearing what sounded like thudding, fighting, screams. It sounded like people were constantly coming and going from the apartment, that sounded like people were drinking and like partying. And they had said that these thuds and the banging were so loud that they felt like their ceiling was going to cave in on them. Once the occupants of this apartment complex, when they realised what had happened and what had happened to Jennifer, they were overwhelmed with guilt. And one of the occupants in particular, they were very overwhelmed with guilt because the Christmas tree lights that were used to string up Jennifer, they had actually been stolen from her porch, and she just could not get rid of this sense of guilt, this sense of responsibility, because it was something of hers that was used to tie her up, but then also to strangle her to death. So that very same day that Jennifer's body has been found, Angela receives a text off a friend, basically saying, "Oh my God, did you hear about that body that was found at the school?" And immediately, Angela starts to panic. But also at this point, Jennifer's family's very, very concerned because they're made aware that Jennifer didn't attend her appointment that day. Like she was meant to. She was meant to attend that appointment and she was meant to come home, and she didn't. So Jennifer's sister, she gets the contact information that Jennifer had left for Peggy in the apartment, the address, etc. So she calls Peggy's phone, Peggy picks up and says, "Where's Jennifer? We've not heard from her. We would have expected to hear from her by now, and she had an appointment that she's missed." Peggy's all caught off guard, freaking out a wee bit, and she just lies on the spot and says that Jennifer had left, she doesn't know where she is, and basically don't call again because they don't know where Jennifer is. And this makes Jennifer's family very, very suspicious. Peggy also receives a call from Ricky. Now Ricky's saying to Peggy, "Get out of that apartment immediately. Angela and I have been arrested." And although he's given Peggy this warning, The police know the group that they're going after, and shortly after the arrest of Angela and Ricky would be the arrest of Amber, Melvin, Peggy and Robert. So at first, when the 6 of them go in, right, they're trying to be all noble and present a united front, like we're in this together till the end. We didn't do anything wrong, they never did anything wrong, like I can vouch for my friends, they're completely innocent, like nothing happened. But then of course this, united front, this would crumble like a cookie, they would fold like a deck chair and all of them started to sing like Johnny Cash. And of course, they start pointing their fingers left, right and centre at each other. So police, they decide to attend Ricky's apartment because they want to try and find some evidence of this crime being committed. And my God, they basically walk into a treasure trove, right? Because it's all there. Everything to see. The murder weapon, they found that very, very easily. They found it basically right away and they could tell that it had been used to stab Jennifer. I just say this apartment was an absolute state. The 6 of them claimed that they had tried to tidy up and, clean up. But it's literally giving when I was 7 years old, would tell my mum that I'll tidy my room, you don't need to tidy my room. And then I would just shove everything under the bed or in my wardrobe. Like, ta-da, messes away. And then you open the wardrobe and it falls on you. It's given that. So Angela is being questioned, right? And she says that, yeah, her and Jennifer, they briefly fell out because Jennifer was making moves on her man. But ultimately, she was like, no harm, no foul. They hugged it out. They moved on. But Angela said the rest of the group, they were furious with Jennifer. They were furious that Jennifer would try and take Angela's man. How dare she? But why are they fuming and she's not? Make it make sense. It doesn't. So she's saying like, yeah, they were furious, but I didn't do anything to Jennifer. I would never have touched Jennifer. Then Angela proceeds to say, the rest of the group tied her up and I only punched her in the face. But Ange, you just said you never hurt her at all, and now you're claiming you punched her in the face. Do you see why this makes you look bad? Please just know that every single one of them is talking BS, and very soon they are just knocking blocks off their Jenga tower of lies until they get to the very root. So first, they're able to get Melvin to admit his part in this murder, which essentially was the stabbing Jennifer to death. Ricky, he admitted to disposing of Jennifer's body, but said he was accompanied by Melvin. Bearing in mind he has inflicted a lot of torture on Jennifer up to this point. So Angela was arrested and her initial incarceration before her trial, she was handing out confessions like jelly beans to inmates. She couldn't wait to tell them that she was responsible, she was the instigator, and she was the one who murdered Jennifer. Angela Marinucci would end up being the first of the Greensburg 6 that would be convicted for Jennifer's murder. So at first, Angela was sentenced to life in prison. However, this would later be overturned because she was only 17 at the time of the crimes. And they said that, it wasn't really fair for a juvenile to serve a whole life sentence. But then maybe said juvenile shouldn't have tortured and helped him murder a supposed friend. In 2017, she would be sentenced to life in prison again. This was then overturned yet again because, she can't get life without parole. Well, I think that's the point, that she doesn't ever get out. We don't want to parole her. But in 2022, Judge Rita Hathaway, she would impose the third and final sentence, you could say. So this would include consecutive prison terms, the first one being 40 years to life, and then an additional 20 to 40 years imprisonment for conspiracy. Which, can I just say, that's getting off lucky. Every single one of these people should have been given the death penalty. Every single one. Now, Ricky Smyrns, whatever his name is, and Melvin Knight, they were both sentenced to death by lethal injection. Both of them have tried to appeal their sentences, but ultimately their convictions have been upheld, so we're just waiting on them jumping on that wee board and doing a wee night-night. Then Amber, she would plead guilty to third-degree murder, and apparently this was against her defence's recommendation. They told her not to plead guilty to third-degree murder, but she ultimately decided that she wanted to. So she would receive 40 to 80 years in prison, which again should have been given the death penalty. And she proceeded to testify against Angela, Melvin and Ricky, and it's important to say that she didn't accept any sort of deal for this. She just went ahead and testified against them. And people say like, oh, well, obviously she had a conscience, like she regretted what she did. Too little too late, my friend. Ain't happening. I still want you getting the death penalty because you took away an innocent life of a beautiful girl who did nothing but be nice to you. You can testify against Angela, Melvin and Ricky, but you are still a despicable monster. Now, Peggy Miller and Robert Masters, they also pled guilty to third-degree murder. Whatever. Peggy, she received 35 to 74 years in prison, and then Robert had received 30 to 70 years in prison. But, you know, fry them, in my opinion. Now, ultimately, that does end the case here, but as always, I want to do a whole 360 and let's just bring it right back to Jennifer. This beautiful young woman, so full of life, had her whole life ahead of her, so full of love. She wanted to live a normal, happy life. She wanted to have friends. She wanted to one day have a husband, you know, get married. She wanted to experience life and hopefully one day have a child. She was a kind of person who would do anything for anyone and expect nothing in return. And the way her life was stolen from her, it'll never make sense to me how these amazing people are targeted and taken advantage of for being nothing but kind and nice to everyone. Jennifer's death has had such an impact on her family. They say that when it snows outside, they're just remembered of that horrific day that they found out their daughter was murdered. They can't enjoy the snow. All the special holidays like Christmas, birthdays, they've just lost their meaning because they've lost a part of themselves. When Jennifer left this earth, parts of them left with her. I really just want to finish off by reading a quote from Jennifer's sister that she had said, and I think it perfectly sums up their grief. I didn't realise at the time how she did add to life until she was murdered. Her absence is indescribable. The music is gone. The sun still shines and the earth still moves, but the music is gone. And I think that perfectly sums up what this family has had to go through. Like, the world keeps turning, people get on with their lives, but ultimately the melody in their lives, the thing that made their lives worth living, was stolen from them. But that is the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I know this is a really hard case to listen to. The details are horrific, but I just really wanted to cover this case because I wasn't actually aware of Jennifer before this case was recommended to me. And now that I have read about her and got to know the kind of person she was, I just wanted to share her with my audience, and I want you to remember her as well. And if you're ever in a position in life where you can see someone who's been beaten down and needs a hand up, please remember Jennifer's kindness and approach everyone with that. But I really appreciate you watching this video today and sticking with me through this, because I know it was a tough lesson, but like I said, I just really wanted to share Jennifer with, you know, the world. I know my videos don't go very far, but I've got an audience from all over the world, and I just wanted to really get her name out there to the people who maybe haven't heard of her case. Before you go, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, put the notification bell on because I upload 2 times a week, every single week. Don't forget to leave a comment down below for me to really help boost that engagement and get me out in the YouTube algorithm, because why does it hate me? But I am so incredibly grateful for each and every single one of you because you support me wholeheartedly. You always like, you always comment, you share, you send new subscribers my way, you recommend me to people, and I'm just so thankful I can't even describe. In the description below you will find all the details of the products used on my face today alongside my social media handles, my Instagram, my TikTok if you want to give me a follow over there. I'm actually going to leave a Google Doc that I've created down below because some people are having issues where their emails aren't coming through on my email for some reason. So I'm going to link a Google Doc down below and you can just put your case suggestions on there. And if you are trying to reach me on Instagram or anything, just let me know in the comments that you've sent a DM so I can head over and check. Otherwise, if it goes into my requests, I get a lot of weird people in my requests, like wanting feet pics or inviting me to inappropriate live streams. So I don't really check in there because it's always quite horrifying. So if you just let me know that you've sent one, I'll go over and check. But that is it for today's video. Please remember, be a good person, do not be a bad person, stay safe, look after each other, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!